sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Tuesday and welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I do want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sundays. I want to give a shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. We have a big show for you tonight. I don't want to keep our guest waiting, so let's go ahead and show you what we are going to discuss tonight. And I will do call in tonight after the show, just FYI. I know we missed it last week, but it is back this week. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, again, we have a lot of things are going on, folks. Tonight, we are going to discuss, if you have not heard about this, this is a big deal. Apparently, Candace Owens has dropped receipts that proves it looks like she has been telling the truth about where Charlie Kirk was headed. I also have a recent update about this from a live stream earlier today, where Andrew Colvett has also confirmed that these messages are authentic. So this is really big news, ladies and gentlemen. What has been going on there? We're also going to discuss Donald Trump has been blocked by a federal judge. Now, this involves his mobilizing the National Guard and ICE, bringing them into cities such as Chicago and Portland, Oregon. There has been a troubling incident that did happen in Chicago. That person is now taking legal action. We're going to get into all that, and I'm going to tell you what I think this is really about. We're also going to dive into, this is a very concerning issue here. Bari Weiss has now been promoted very quickly as the editor of CBS News. We're going to get into the nitty gritty, what happened behind the scenes about this particular project that is happening with CBS News, Bari Weiss, and of course, Paramount, and what the Ellisons have to do and what that means for you when it comes to censorship, because I think that's what this is really all about. We're also going to discuss, we have a good positive news story. His name is Julian Brown. I've discussed him on the show before. He has an update about his invention here, Plastoline. It looks like things are working out great. So I do want to show you his win over the week. And of course, we have the Gaza panel, because today is the 2nd year anniversary of October 7th. And I do think it is important that you hear from people that are a part of the Arab American community and their thoughts and where they are feeling right now. And I do want to go ahead and bring them in. Let me go ahead and introduce them. We are joined tonight by Craig Mockheiber. He is a former UN human rights official. We're also joined by Abdel Halim Abdel Rahman. He is a Palestinian American journalist, and he's the host of Uncharted Territory podcast. And last but not least, we are also joined by Dr. Rania Masri. She's the co-director and director of organizing and policy of the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network. Let's go ahead and bring them in. Welcome to all of you.
Hi, Sabrina. Good to be with everybody.
Good to be with you all. Thank you for the invitation.
Hello, good to be with you guys as well. Thank you for having us on.
So first and foremost, thank you to all of you for coming on. If someone would have told me after October 7th, 2023, that we would be dealing with this 2 years later, I don't know if I would have believed it. So for me, it is very hard to just come to terms with the fact that we have literally watched a live stream genocide for 2 years. And so I think my first question, I want to start with you, Rania. When we go back to October 7th, this narrative that was pushed then and is still somewhat pushed now, that Israel has a right to defend itself. Does it really? Does an occupying nation have a right to defend itself. What's your opinion about that?
It's not an opinion. That we depend on international law, and international law is very clear. An occupied population has the right to use armed resistance as a means of liberation. And a country or a nation or an entity that is occupying another does not have the right to claim self-defense when an occupied population rises up for its liberty. Again, this is not opinion, this is international law. Now, people may argue, but Gaza is not occupied. No, Gaza is, in every sense of the word, an occupied territory, because Israel for more than 15 years has been occupying the sea around Gaza, occupying the land around Gaza, even occupying the airwaves, even controlling the electricity. So whether or not there are Israeli armed forces within Gaza city does not mean that Gaza has been liberated for more than 15 years. Rather, Israel had been implementing a criminal, illegal blockade on Gaza. Israel, before the genocide that began more than 2 years ago, had been implementing calorie rations on the Palestinians in Gaza. And let us remember, the vast majority of the Palestinians in Gaza are refugees from 1948 Palestine. So no, Israel cannot claim self-defense. And I would go further, that we cannot even call the actions of the armed resistance within Palestine as a terrorist action, because these are actions directed against soldiers of the Israeli army, and actions directed against soldiers cannot be considered terrorism. Rather, by, again, using the US legal code of terrorism, it is actually the actions of the Israeli regime over the past 77 years that are textbook terrorism according to the US legal code.
I'm so glad you said that, Dr. Masri, because I think that, again, you're not going to hear that on corporate media. They don't want people to know that. They don't want people to know what international law actually says. So I think that's important for people to hear that message. Craig, I spoke to you a long time ago at the beginning of, well, not at the beginning, but not too long after October 7th. You were working with the UN, and you had a lot of frustration about the inability there for the UN to really hold Israel accountable. When you look back on things, how do you feel about it today? Do you feel like the UN is still in that same position where they're really not taking a stand for the Palestinian people?
Well, I think we have to say that every institution, national, international, and beyond, has failed over the course of the past 2 years, over the course of the past 80 years, over the course of almost a century of colonization in Palestine, to do its job and enforce international law. The UN is no exception. Now, there are parts of the UN that have been absolutely heroic. I will point to the UNRWA staff, hundreds of whom have been targeted and murdered by the Israeli regime, many along with their families, just for doing their jobs inside of Gaza, and who have continued, the survivors of UNRWA, who have continued to try to relieve some of the suffering of their neighbors. That's the UN too, and they deserve nothing, I think, but our praise. I would point as well to the independent human rights mechanisms like the Special Rapporteur, Francesca Albanese, or the Commission of Inquiry, who have, despite all of the persecution and the threats and the smears and the lies and the US sanctions that have been imposed against them for telling the truth, they have done their job in documenting the abuses and in insisting on the application of international law. And variously, humanitarians and human rights actors within the organization who've done a good job. But the political leadership of the United Nations and the intergovernmental bodies of the United Nations have failed miserably, not because they do not have the power to act, but because they didn't have either the courage or the principle to act. And this includes the Secretary General, his senior advisors, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the Security Council, and, I will say at this moment, even the General Assembly, where there is no US veto.
Well said there, Craig. Abdel Halim, I want to get your opinion about some of the narrative that was spread after October 7th, in particular, that Hamas put babies in an oven. Now, even though that was debunked multiple times, and even CNN had to debunk that, there are still politicians who are spreading this narrative today. One of them more recently is Pete Buttigieg, who just said this recently during an interview. Do you feel as though that they are just propagandize and they don't know? Or do you think that they do know and they're intentionally lying?
I think that they do know and that they're, excuse me, intentionally lying. I think if you look all throughout the history of U.S. foreign policy, there really hasn't been a single administration that has been devoted to granting Palestinians their human rights. And I think just as the Middle East at large, we've been largely portrayed as barbarians. It's, we've always had this very Orientalist perspective on who we are and our existence. So once the narrative came out that there was these mass rape or putting children into ovens or 40 beheaded babies, I think the entire world began to believe it. But I think what's really shocking is that the amount of open source evidence debunking all this. And yet we still have politicians who hold significant power here in the United States that are adamant on perpetuating these myths. And I think it's more of a symptom, an explicit plank within the American political system to be able to demonize Palestinians, to put them down, to portray them in a false light and get away with it. And I think that has a lot to do with, the really influence that AIPAC still has over the American Congress. And it's without a doubt, there's a high correlation. I know correlation doesn't equal causation, but I think in this case, we can make the exception here that there is a high correlation between individuals who receive money from AIPAC and pro-Israel lobbies and the individuals who continue to espouse these falsehoods about October 7th. And of course, perpetuate the myth that these Palestinians are baby-eating barbaric animals unworthy of human rights or recognition.
Yeah. I ask these questions because today is the 2nd year anniversary. I did notice a trend on social media, starting with Zoran, but he's not the only one. There were a number of politicians that issued a statement about being the 2-year anniversary, obviously. And I noticed they all seem to have the same little layout here. All of them begin with the same horrific crime or horrific attack. They're all using like similar words here. This is what Zoran Mandami said, someone who said that he would not go to Israel, someone who said that, he said he would not push back on people saying from the river to the sea, but now has walked that back, among other things. 2 years ago today, Hamas carried out a horrific war crime. Everybody's saying horrific, by the way, killing more than 1,100 Israelis and kidnapping 250 more. I mourn these lives and pray for the safe return of every hostage still held and for every family whose lives were torn apart by these atrocities. Then he mentions the Palestinians. In the aftermath of that day, Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government launched a genocidal war, a death toll that now far exceeds 67,000. I think is way more than that. With the Israeli military bombing homes, hospitals, and schools into rubble, every day in Gaza has become a place where grief itself has run out of language. I mourn these lives and pray for the families that they have been shattered. Our government has been complicit through it all. This must end. The occupation and apartheid must end. Peace must be pursued through diplomacy, not war crimes. And our government must act to end these atrocities and hold those responsible to account. These last 2 years have demonstrated the very worst of humanity. We must answer it by modeling the very best, a relentless pursuit of higher ideals and unwavering commitment to universal human rights. So his response was better than others. But still, as someone who is supposed to be the was the pro-Palestinian candidate, people are coming after him for this, right? Like this idea of who you choose to center first. And that's what stood out to me during a time where there's a genocide. Look at who he chose, right, to center. Now, some are saying that, well, he's a politician, so he has to be careful with the wording that he uses. What do all of you think about that? Let's start with you, Rania. How do you feel about Zoran's response there?
I feel that he is already slipping, and he reminds me a lot of Barack Obama. And I find Barack Obama to be one of the worst presidents this country has known since Bill Clinton. What I find to be upsetting is not that he just limited emotions of horror to when Israelis are hurt. And of course, crimes committed against my people are not horrific, but that he lied. 1,100 Israelis were not killed by Hamas. The vast majority of Israelis were killed by Israelis. The vast majority of Israelis were killed by Israelis. We need to repeat that. It has been proven without a doubt that Israeli forces used the Hannibal Directive. And there's so much evidence about this so much evidence to even think that an amazing militia, an amazing armed force that had been captive in a concentration camp in Gaza managed not only to do the amazing feats that they did, and I do want to honor the resistance, but the fact that they somehow destroyed all those cars and had that level of armory, it was insane. We know for a fact from statements from the Israeli military that the vast majority, again, that were killed by Israelis. So the fact that Zohran Mamdani actually perpetuates a lie is problematic. He could have simply not said that. That's one. Two, if we're going to claim that they're hostages, I have a problem here because they're not hostages, they're prisoners of war. So if we want to use correct language, we need to be using it consistently. The ones that are hostages are the thousands and thousands of Palestinian men, women, and children, doctors and nurses who have been kidnapped and held hostage and tortured in Israeli jail. And all of this, again, is I'm using legal words. They are the ones held hostage. And we know for a fact that they have been tortured, sexually assaulted, brutalized, and died under Israeli control. So there's a problem here with the facts that he's presenting. Again, there's a problem with his presentation over whose lives do we mourn more than others. And I find this really, really worrisome. Zohran Mamdani did not worry me when he stopped defending the term global intifada, because I don't expect him to know Arabic and know what an intifada actually means. I can forgive him that. But then he started sliding when he started backtracking on defunding the police. And defunding the police is critical to Palestinian liberation. And now he goes even further by promoting racism in his language and by promoting incorrect facts that most likely he will be mayor. Maybe by the time that he's mayor, he will have gone so far as to not be asking for equality for all our rights, but will be asking us once again to accept crumbs rather than to accept the full rights. One more thing I don't like about his statement is he talks about peace. He talks about peace. I find peace to be a very problematic word. What we want is the implementation of international law, because peace can be the absence of violence, and peace for too long by the United States has meant that the occupied, colonized population dies silently. That is what they consider to be peace. So I want to be very careful. Peace is not a word that adequately represents the oppressed and marginalized community. Rather, justice, equity, and international law are more apt, and they are more, they're closer to what we aspire to. So all of these I find to be problematic in Mamdani's statements.
Craig, your thoughts?
No, I agree with Rania. I mean, I will give credit to Zohran because he is a politician in the United States. And for a politician in the United States to issue a statement today that explicitly talks about genocide, that explicitly talks about apartheid, that calls out Israel for its war crimes, that's all terrific. But if I were counseling him, I would raise all of the points that Rania has just raised. So, and one other. He makes the same mistake, and in his case, I think it's probably a mistake, the same distortion that we see everywhere in the West, which is to act as if history started on the 7th of October. It did not. As we said already in the opening here, the Palestinian people have been under an oppressive, racist, colonial regime, denying their rights and perpetrating all sorts of atrocities on them for the better part of 100 years. There was before October 7th and October 6th and an October 5th and an October 4th, going all the way back to the beginning of the colonization of Palestine. And the problem is that when you use that as your frame, you already have stepped into the territory of dehumanizing the Palestinian people, because you're saying on this day when some Israelis were killed, that's when things started to matter. So I would prefer that we don't start history on any arbitrary day, including October 7th. I would also say that agree with Rania when she talks about prisoners of war. He spoke about kidnapping. You can have a debate about civilians with no connection to the military, but many of those who were taken by the resistance forces were military personnel who under international law are qualified as prisoners of war. And so that is a misrepresentation. I also would take issue with his numbers, as Rania did. And that's dangerous because the original inflated numbers that the Israeli regime disseminated after the 7th of October The reason they inflated the numbers, which, by the way, the numbers that they were using included Palestinian resistance fighters who were killed and their burned bodies from Apache helicopters and Hellfire missiles. It included Israeli military personnel who were killed in the fighting. And it included, as Ronnie has said, hundreds, we don't know how many, but hundreds of Israelis who were killed because the Hannibal Directive brought in massive Israeli forces that killed indiscriminately everybody on the ground, including Israeli civilians. And why that's important is because those inflated numbers were a part of the propaganda for genocide. They were issued at the same time that you heard the story of 40 beheaded babies that never happened, the story of a mass rape campaign that never happened, the story of babies in ovens that never happened, the story of babies on clotheslines that never happened. All of these stories were not just the products of fiction writers to make it more interesting. They were specifically, together with the false numbers, disseminated to create political space for genocide. They were a part of the genocide to make sure that those in the West had dehumanized the Palestinian people enough that Israel could get away with genocide and that Western governments could get away with financing and arming and covering for and protecting the perpetration of that genocide. So I would advise him to be very careful about repeating the propaganda of the Israeli regime, even as we recognize that in that statement he goes further than other American politicians, but we have a lot further to go before we get it right.
Well said there. Abdel Halim, how do you feel about that statement?
Well, I certainly agree for the most part. I think that the framing it as if history kind of started on October 7th is something that I find personally infuriating, but is also a narrative that is completely divorced from reality. That's one. Two, being that my biggest issue with the statement isn't necessarily that Zohran Mamdani said that Hamas committed war crimes. There are some human rights organizations that claim that they did, and while we can have a debate about that, there's nothing wrong with him expressing sympathy for the other side. I think where my biggest issue is that I often hear these very broad blanket statements by politicians about human rights and accountability. And in the context of Israel, those are just words, not actions. What would accountability look like for Zohran Mamdani? For an example, is it sanctions? Is it him using his very limited mayoral capacity to push for accountability or the enforcement of U.S. law? But I want to also say that I do think Zohran Mamdani is a very good man. I think he would be a very good fit for New York. I mean, the options, the alternatives are horrific. And I also want us to just kind of take a step back here and realize that at the end of the day, if he wins this election, which he probably will, I think, he's going to be the mayor of New York, not the president of the United States, not a member of Congress, not a representative. So regardless of what he says, I do think his ability to impact things would be very limited. As we know, New York has a plethora of crises that it's facing from an internal standpoint, and I think that's his job. Now, did he bend the knee a little bit? Absolutely. Am I shocked? No. But do I think Zohran Mamdani deserves to be dragged through the mud for some of the things that he says? No. I would have preferred that Zohran Mamdani not only talk about accountability, but for the fact that there are 9,000, I believe, Palestinian prisoners held right now in Israeli prison, arbitrarily, without trial, without charge, being detained, which is a blatant violation of international law. You could talk about releasing the hostages, fine. That's not necessarily antithetical to history. But what about the Palestinian women and children who are being abused mentally, physically, sexually inside of Israeli prisons? I still think that the amount of influence that he has, even if he doesn't have a policy standpoint, I would like for him to amplify that narrative. And what I do hope is that Zohran and other politicians, and again, I'm not attacking Zohran. I happen to like him. I've never met him, but I do happen to like him, is that politicians need to read the tea leaves here. Being critical of Israel and bearing the need to internal establishment dynamics is no longer popular. Had he come out and not said anything about Hamas, it would not really have impacted his mayoral candidacy as well. A lot of people would have agreed with him. A lot of people would have said, yeah, Israel's bad. And I would even go as far to say it's not even genocide anymore. It's a Holocaust. I wake up every day and I see children burned. I see skeletons. I see dogs eating corpses and children looking for their parents under rubble. So to me, genocide, and it's the accurate, correct legal term. It's almost like, is that even the right way to describe it anymore? But again, I want to stay rooted in reality. I think if Zoran were running for president or for Congress or some other position where he would directly have some type of policy influence, then maybe that'd be a little bit harsher. But at the end of the day, how many mayors in New York do you see run for president or win it or become members of Congress?
Yeah. Actually, if I could briefly respond to that, I agree with the heart of what you're saying, Abdel Halim, but I think what's critical, and yes, if I were a New Yorker, Zohran Mamdani would have my vote. But what is critical is that we continue to make sure that those that we support do not slide. And we continue to push them, because if we are to forgive him, if we weren't to push back, and we're going to say, Zohran is my man, I'll allow it, and he's under pressure, they'll continue to slide. It is only the popular pressure that keeps politicians in line, particularly when they don't come from an ideological base. And in this country, we do not have a firm ideological base, with a few of the, left-wing third parties out there. The rest are only held firm, or we try to hold them firm. So it's because I want Zohran Mamdani to be the mayor of New York that I will be more critical against him than I will be critical against, Tweedledum and Tweedledee, who we have representing us here in North Carolina.
If I may just briefly reply to that, and I don't mean to cut you off, Craig. I just because she kind of addressed my comment. Firstly, I do appreciate the play in good faith counter argument, and of course I will reciprocate that. Secondly, it's not me letting Mamdani off the hook. I said I do disagree with the framing. I just question the amount of, given his position and what he's running for, I would much rather right now, as an Arab American, after realizing the amount of political power that we gained in the last election, right, using Gaza as a tool, as a springboard of putting Palestinian rights on the map, I would rather expend more energy into thinking about how we can create a social, legislative, and political arm to ensure that Palestinian human rights are materialized. And I ultimately believe that while we can pressure Zohran Mamdani, denouncing him, calling him a traitor, which I know you did not say, I'm just speaking to some of the Twitter audience that I've seen that kind of had that hawkish rhetoric, is not productive, right? It's also important that, yes, we got to hold politicians' feet to the fire, but it's important that we don't push them over a cliff. So we need to keep them in our orbit, but also keep them grounded in the same respect. So that would be my response to you.
Yeah, I was just going to take the floor, Sabrina. Sorry, we have hijacked your show completely. You've triggered us with this question. I mean, I think what we all agree with is that we would vote for Mamdani, and he is head and shoulders above any of those politicians at that level who are actually endorsed by a major party. One of the two disgraceful parties, but nevertheless, that's what you need to get in these days. So I would absolutely vote. I mean, I've moved out recently of New York. I'm sad I'm not there to vote for Mamdani, but I do agree that it's essential that we hold them accountable as they're running for office and once they are in office. I think it would be an enormous breakthrough were he elected in New York City. It would burst a million myths about what is possible in terms of change, and would encourage, I think, the movement more broadly. And I will recall as well that so far he's the only or one of very few U.S. politicians I've heard so far has pledged that if Netanyahu comes to New York, he will instruct that he be arrested. And for that alone, he would have my vote.
Well, I want to get everyone's opinion about the flotilla. I have been speaking to people about this in my own private life. And I'm noticing there does seem to be a mixture of feelings around this. Some people have told me privately that they appreciated the first go around, but they don't appreciate multiple attempts at this. Other people have told me they feel like this is what is needed to create more pressure. Greta Thunberg recently just responded about the way she was questioned about the way that she was treated when she was kidnapped by Israel. And she turned this around. And I thought this was so great what she had to say here.
Leaders, so-called leaders who are supposed to represent me, who continue to fuel a genocide, death and destruction, they do not represent me. And this is a last resort that this mission has to exist. It's a shame. It is a shame. And I could talk for a very, very long time about our mistreatment and abuses in our imprisonment, trust me, but that is not the story. What happened here was that Israel, while continuing to worsen and escalate their genocide and mass destruction with genocidal intent, attempting to erase an entire population, an entire nation in front of our very eyes, they once again violated international law by preventing humanitarian aid from getting into Gaza while people are being starved. And we want to also emphasize that we do not only need humanitarian aid to enter Gaza, we need an end to the siege, we need an end to the occupation and the oppression. This action was challenging our extremely violent business as usual that is preventing these war crimes from happening. And that is what this story is about.
I thought that was really important that she chose not to focus on necessarily what happened to her, but bringing it back to the mission at hand. I am curious from the panel, how do all of you feel about the flotilla actions that have taken place? Do you feel like it's worth it in the long run, or do you have some reservations, Rania?
I think it depends on how we judge an action. Has the flotilla resulted in increased media exposure of Israeli crimes? Yes, most definitely does. When we think about that the Israeli government labeled Greta Thunberg and the hundreds of others as terrorists, even though they were the ones fulfilling the legal duty that their countries and their nations have not fulfilled, when we saw very clearly that Israel, by kidnapping these individuals, and by the way, I have to do a shout out, I am appalled by liberal media that has referred to these individuals as detainees or under arrest when they were kidnapped. We need to be using this language clearly. And yes, I am shouting you out, Amy Goodman at Democracy Now! So using, clarifying the crimes of the Israelis, I think is very powerful. Third, when we look at that, these flotillas managed to give a little respite for the Palestinian fishermen to actually be able to use the sea. That during this time when the Israeli Navy was busy conducting yet another war crime and violating yet another international law and kidnapping hundreds of others, this was a time for a brief moment for Palestinians to be able to breathe and get fish that was necessary. That is critical. The fourth thing that I think is very powerful that they're doing is they're showing the world, as powerful as nonviolent action is, as heroic as nonviolent action is, what we need to stop this genocide is armed resistance and military intervention. These are all things that the global Sumud flotilla and the flotillas before them and the flotillas coming have shown the world. And so I do think that they are important. I do think that we need to be supporting them because of these four reasons, because of what they clarify.
Thank you, Rania. Craig, how do you feel about the flotillas?
Well, I think the flotillas are a part of a global movement of peoples that has been extremely important, not just in the last 2 years, but in Palestinian solidarity going back for many years. Because if you look at everything meaningful that has happened in the last couple of years towards some modicum of progress, it has not come from governments or international institutions. It has come from people. And that's why you see the people's encampments on universities and the people's flotillas heading across the Mediterranean, the people's marches through the Sinai toward Rafah. All of these movements, all these elements of the movement have been very important in keeping the light shining on the situation and in showing that the world is not represented by the governments that are either complicit or inactive in responding to the genocide. And I think that's very important. And the flotillas in particular, there is courage here. Since 2010, every flotilla that's attempted to break the Gaza blockade has been sabotaged, intercepted, attacked in international waters, abducted by Israeli regime soldiers. And in 2010, remember that the Mavi Marmara was attacked by the Israelis. It was boarded by Israeli regime soldiers who murdered 10 of the humanitarians on board that ship. And this one has been no exception. The Israeli regime repeatedly attacked these boats before they ultimately seized them in an act of piracy. By the way, there's no meaningful dispute here. This is a gross violation of international law. It's a violation of international humanitarian law. It's a violation of the law of the sea, and it's a violation of international human rights law and the denial of the liberty of these people. And by the way, it is another act of genocide, because remember that these are humanitarian ships sailing to Gaza that had no intention of entering so-called Israeli territorial waters. They never did enter Israeli territorial waters until they were abducted by the Israelis. It was sailing for Gaza to provide humanitarian relief. Attacking that in the context of a genocide is itself another act of genocide. So I say, more and more and more. If this genocide is not challenged by the people of the world in whatever means you have available, the genocide will continue. And any modicum of accountability by official institutions like the ICC, the ICJ, some national courts, and so on, even symbolic measures like certain countries recognizing the state of Palestine, which of course changes nothing on the ground, but would not have happened without the massive pressure from the people of the world. And this flotilla is one manifestation of that pressure.
Well said there. Abdel Halim, what's your opinion about the flotillas? And do you think that there should be more ships? I know there were 50 this time around. I was wondering, would Israel be able to stop 100?
I'll take that even a step further. Would Israel be able to stop 1,000? Look, no one, unfortunately, is going to come to the defense of the Palestinians. Not the Arab states, the UN, as much as I laud them and applaud them and always appreciate at least the moral and legal, boundaries that they try to set on global norms, unfortunately, is very limited in what they can do. So it really is up to the people. I want to also just kind of talk about the reason why I support is because look at the way Israel is responding. They're calling them terrorists, calling them detainees. But I was watching a lot of those live streams of people on board the global Samud flotilla, and Israel's using incendiary bombs to try to light the ship on fire and other means that could have possibly sunken the ship and killed everyone on board, right? So these people are taking tremendous risk, but I also think that speaks to great volumes of just how much Israel is scared. They're scared that if one of these ships reach Gaza and even delivers a drop of rice to a starving Palestinian child, the siege on Gaza, which I think has gone horrifically overlooked by the international community and the mainstream media for 20 years, will now be pushed into the central frame of the plight of the people in Gaza. And I think that is important. But also, if the global Samud flotilla or others in the future, regardless of their names, succeed, I think Israel knows that a dam will burst, right? They can no longer keep this thing under wraps. They've been banning international journalists, or should I say, international journalists that have a modicum of conscience or intellect from entering Gaza that isn't a paid propagandist. And the fact that they think or feel or are afraid that if just one person goes into Gaza and sees the conditions of Gaza, and it's from somebody that's not paid, somebody that's not part of a think tank, an organization, a media member, they're very afraid and they're very fragile of that perspective and how this illusion that they've portrayed to the American people, really the world for years, would be shattered. So if no one's going to do it, why not them? I will only caveat that by saying I am very deeply afraid for what Israel may do to those people on board, because Chris Smalls, I believe, was on one of the last ones previously, and he said he was beaten horrifically. He was called a lot of horrific names. He was racially abused, and he said he saw people in jail unrecognizable. They were beaten to the point of them being unrecognizable. They were starved. So given the fact that America has just, or I should say at least this administration, but historically speaking, has such a deep discontent for its own citizens challenging the Israeli government, I really do wonder what will happen to them. Right. So theoretically speaking, send 1,000 ships, but I don't think it's performative. It's not a stunt. I just am afraid. I am afraid. I really am. I mean, not to veer off topic too much, but look at all the technocrats buying up American media to push pro-Israel propaganda, and they're getting away with it. What makes you think they can't kill 20, 30, 40, 100 American citizens on board a ship to give someone food, and then Israel cast them at terrorists, and then this administration or others in the future just accept it as truth, as they have with other instances of Israel's abuses against Palestinians.
If I could just very quickly add a few things that I think we need to be also thinking about. It was because of the Italian popular pressure, because of the magnificence of Italian unions, that they embarrassed the Italian government, which is no left-wing government, to send its Italian Navy. Now, of course, the Italian Navy and the Spanish Navy then backtracked. But imagine the next time around. I mean, when we in the States, if we look to the militancy of the protests coming out of Italy, the way that they take over their cities, and we have yet to do that in the United States. We have yet to be as militant in the protest as the Italians have been. So that is one glorious thing. Second, thank you, Abdel Halim, for reminding us that not all the humanitarian activists on board of the Global Sumud Flotilla have been released from their kidnapping. Those that are still in Israeli jails are primarily the Black and brown members of the Global Sumud Flotilla, which again speaks volumes about the racism of this ethnocentric supremacist settler colony entity, otherwise known as Israel. The third thing that I do want to bring up, and I think we have to recognize, we can't say that no one is standing with Palestinians. Let us please not forget the glorious Yemeni fighters who have put their lives on the line time and time again, and have been saying for more than 2 years that their blood is not more valuable than the blood of our families in Palestine. And let us also not forget how much Hezbollah had stood beside the Palestinians in Gaza, because Hezbollah, as well as every single resistance movement in the region, recognizes that Zionism is not only an existential threat to Palestinians, but is an existential threat to Lebanese, to Syrians, to Iraqis, to Jordanians, to everybody in the region. It is without doubt an existential threat. It threatens our very existence. So I just want to recognize the solidarity and the armed support that has also been given to Palestine, both from Hezbollah and as well from our Yemeni brethren.
I just want to add to, for those who are not aware, Nelson Mandela's grandson is one of the ones that is still imprisoned. I don't know if everyone knew that he was there as well. So that brings me to this question about a path forward and what comes next. In particular, how do you move forward? And I think that's a question a lot of people have had. Me in particular, I have to be 100% honest. I think the first time in my life where I did see Islamophobia was after September 11. And boy, did I see it. And I saw it everywhere. And then it seemed like a couple years later down the line, it kind of tapered off a little bit, or it wasn't as overt in front of me. Then after October 7th, here we are again. So one thing that is different this time that I have noticed is the conservatives. There is a conservative influencer, and I said the genie isn't going back in the bottle. He went pretty viral with this video here. It's not just the left that's waking up. I want people to see what he said here.
So I'm outside the Capitol building, and I need you to know something. Do not scroll. If you're a leftist, if you're a conservative, it doesn't fucking matter. My name is Hunter Howell, and I would never do anything to harm myself. I just need to tell you the truth. In case something bad happens to me, I'm a person on the right side, the Republican side, so to speak. But you could consider me based, because the United States is occupied by Israel politically. Now, obviously, Gaza and Palestine are occupied physically, and it's a lot worse for the people over there. But that will come to us too. Mark my words, this app has already been bought by Larry Ellison. They just bought CBS as well. And we don't have a lot of time to unite, which is why you need to get this video out and start loving your neighbors, start coming together, red and blue, purple revolution, right? Because pretty soon there won't be many people on this app like me that are able to criticize Israel, okay? We're next. And if we don't make a stand now, together, united, strong, in numbers, then we're cooked. But I believe that we can fight back and win. Let me know your thoughts.
This is the difference I see this time around when I compare it to after September 11. Now you even have some conservatives that said this is ridiculous. Enough is enough. Like, I'm seeing babies get killed, etc. And I just have to ask. I want to in the panel with this question here. How does that make all of you feel to see that there does seem to be something also happening within the conservative spaces, even those who supported Donald Trump, in regards to the genocide in Gaza? And do you feel that there is a way for not just the Palestinian people, but Arab Americans in particular to move forward? Rania. Oh, I think you're muted.
There we go. To me, I don't look at it as Arab Americans or non-Arab Americans. I don't use identity politics. To me, the issue is those of us who support justice and liberation, and those of us who choose to bow our head and kiss the feet of the master. And that's how I separate communities. We have people on all sides of different identities. So for those of us, I think there is clarity now that perhaps we can step out of this duopoly of red versus blue. Neither the Democrats nor the Republicans have an ideology that they have been building. So if we separate that and we just look at policy, we are now seeing that there is more clarity coming out of Tucker Carlson than there is coming out of Bill Maher. And Bill Maher was the liberal lover. And Tucker Carlson was the man who, many people from liberals to the left would go, but look at the difference in the quality. Look at the statements coming out of Marjorie Taylor Greene, compare it to the statements coming out of most anybody in Congress when we talk about Palestine and when we talk about a number of different issues. So what I'm hoping will happen is that we step out of the red and blue and start to think about real politics, start to think about real ideology, start to work on building unions, really, really building unions, organizing locally, supporting a third party. I mean, as y'all know, I'm a green, I'm a socialist, but one doesn't even have to be a green or a socialist to support the concept of policies rather than identities. And I think there could be power there. I also think for every one of us individually, we need to take advantage of this narrative to identify our enemy. Our enemy is not Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government, because the Israeli government is fully representative of the Israeli society. Let us be very clear. This genocide has the vast majority of support of Israelis, including medical institutions that are supporting the genocide and the capture and the sexual assault of our men, women, and children. So we need to be very clear. The enemy here is Zionism. The enemy here is this supremacist, ethnocentric settler colony, otherwise known as Israel, supported by Zionists, be they Jewish Zionists, Christian Zionists, and unfortunately, we see them in the United Arab Emirates and in Saudi Arabia, Muslim Zionists. So once we clarify that that is the enemy, and once we identify the start of that enemy, then we can start building a very liberatory narrative that connects it, in which we here, everybody in the United States recognizes, and I'm not saying rhetoric, I'm saying this is clear fact, the liberation of Palestine will be the liberation of the United States. The liberation of Palestine will be the liberation of the United States, because it is through that liberation that we in the United States will be liberated from the influence of the military-industrial complex. We will be liberated from the influence of racist policies, and we will be liberated from this joke called the duopoly that Ralph Nader reminded us of when he ran for president decades ago, that the only difference between the Democrats and the Republicans is the speed at which they fall to their knees in front of corporations. So again, let us recognize that the harms that are being conducted with US finances, with US technology, with bipartisan support in Gaza are harms that will be and have already been repeated in many forms in the United States. It is a laboratory. So let us be working in solidarity, not out of charity, recognizing that our liberations are intertwined.
Powerful. Craig.
Absolutely. I mean, I think what the last couple of years have taught a lot of folks, amongst them many conservatives in this country, is that, this ideology of political Zionism is a deeply racist, fundamentally violent, and necessarily fascistic ideology. And people in Western Asia have been learning for a long time now that it is first and foremost the Palestinian people who are being colonized and brutalized by this political ideology. But ask the Lebanese, ask the Syrians, ask the Iraqis, ask the Iranians, ask the Yemenis. This is necessarily an annihilatory ideology that has brought death and destruction far beyond the borders of the colony that they have created in Palestine. And that the extension of that oppression has now reached its hand very deeply into the governance of Western countries like the US, the UK, Germany, and others, to the extent that on behalf of a small oppressive foreign regime known as Israel, people in the US are being persecuted with the full force of the state. In this country, for example, you can burn the American flag, criticize the American government, criticize the political ideology of the state, and nothing will necessarily happen to you. But if you criticize Zionism, if you criticize Israel, if you burn the Israeli flag, you can be punished under the full force of the law. You can be expelled from university, denied tenure, you can be deported, you can be arrested, you can be beaten, you can be imprisoned on behalf of an oppressive foreign regime and its ideology of Zionism. And I think people across the political spectrum in the West, including in the United States, have begun to recognize that this is a deep throat. You know, Aimé Césaire is the one who said most clearly that colonialism brought home is fascism. So all of these manifestations of fascism, all of this, ripping away of the remnants of democracy here in the US and elsewhere in the West on behalf of the Israeli regime is what Aimé Césaire warned us about. And you don't have to be a green or a progressive or a Democrat or a libertarian or a Republican or a MAGA person. It doesn't matter where you are on that spectrum to recognize that is a direct threat to the rights and well-being of all of us. And that's why when Rania says, to liberate Palestine, we have to liberate ourselves. And to liberate ourselves, we have to liberate Palestine. That is not a slogan. That is a fact. These are the same forces that are threatening all of us, including this political ideology, which is stripping away the rights of people, regardless of background, Christians and Muslims and Jews and agnostics and atheists and Hindus and Buddhists and Republicans and Democrats. It doesn't matter. This is not a horizontal threat. It is a top-down threat, and one that we have to resist.
Well said there, Craig. Abdel Halim?
Yeah, well, firstly, I'll preface my response by saying that I agree mostly with what Craig said, and of course, with what Rania said. But I do think that young man's comments on that video you just played, I really think what spurned that is that a lot of Americans, both Democrats and Republicans, are starting to see the American spirit inside of the Palestinians. And what do I mean by that, right? Not too long ago, there was this thing called the Boston Tea Party, in which the American revolutionaries, said taxation without representation, not so fast, right? So they only storm the Boston Harbor and they throw tea over, and they were called terrorists for fighting and sticking up for themselves. What they see is that same revolutionary spirit now. They see that Palestinians are not the barbarians or the evil hordes of mutants that Bill Maher and the liberal media tries to frame us as. They see that Palestinians are normal human beings who simply want to have a normal life. They want to wake up in the morning. They want to be able to take their kids to school. They want to be able to love their families. They want to be able to have a normal job. They don't want to have to worry about their sons and daughters being kidnapped in the middle of the night by the Israeli police state. But I do think that the right coming out and speaking so authoritatively on Israel is another reason, is that if you look at what a lot of people on the right used to say about Israel, is that Judeo-Christian values were kind of like the bedrock of America. Well, when they see how Israel is treating the Christians of Palestine and bombing the churches, the oldest church, I believe the oldest Greek Orthodox church in the world is in Gaza, Israel has shelled it on numerous occasions. So what really is Judeo-Christian values in that instance, right? But more importantly, I think, to answer your question of like, what's the path forward, and seeing how the dam has broken on the right, and seeing kind of a new wave of progressives who are no longer just progressive except Palestine, I really think it's time to come together as a grassroots activist movement and start pushing for some real punishment on Israel and making alliances with the political right. I mean, I just kind of speak from my perspective, is that, the BDS movement does a really good job at advocating for boycotts, advocating for divestment. But one thing we don't really push for enough is sanctions, right? Sanctions is what really hurts the Israeli regime, the institutions, the financial enablers the individuals that perpetuate gross human rights violations against Palestinians. And now that we're starting to see Republicans calling out for an arms embargo against Israel, now is the time to leverage that political momentum and not just say it, but actually build something that is powerful, something that could challenge the Israel lobby, and some type of political and legal instrument where we could be able to leverage this newfound momentum on the right that could actually bring about material gains from the Palestinian people. Because quite frankly, I'm sick and tired of having to go on shows and podcasts and talking about my people dying. I don't really want to keep doing this any longer. I'm kind of hoping and waiting one day that all this will end and that we can live normally, but that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. So if that's how we're going to free ourselves from the Israel lobby and the military industrial complex, that's the way, is using the tools, using the tradecraft that the Zionist lobby have levied against the Palestinian American people and using it against them to try to influence Congress, I believe is really the only way that we could win. Otherwise, we're going to keep coming on the show every October 7th talking about why is there more dead Palestinians in Gaza, or are the Palestinians in Egypt and Jordan? The time to act now. I think we will never see an opportunity like this again. Think about it like a really good football team in the NFL. They got a great team, right? And if they don't win the Super Bowl that one year, there's no guarantee that they'll go back to the Super Bowl the next year. This is a come to Jesus moment for the pro-Palestine community. And what used to be our enemies are now our allies. And now this is an important way for us to build coalitions and strengthen institution building. So that way, come the 2026 midterms and the 2028 presidential election, the entire world will know that Palestine and Palestinian human rights is an integral issue and is on the ballot.
I just want to say thank you all so much. Before you go, can you tell everyone where they can find your work? Ronnie, I see people in the chat have been asking if you have a YouTube channel.
I do not have a YouTube channel, but you can Google my name. You'll find my Twitter, my Instagram, my Facebook. Please feel free to reach out to me via email. I can share media guidelines on the way we need to be speaking about liberation, on the connections between Zionism and the military-industrial complex in the United States, as well as the relationship between all this and data centers that are becoming the new Hydra in the United States, and the importance of Palestine to every single struggle we have. Please reach out to me. My email is very simple, Rania, my first name, at ncejn.org. That's North Carolina Environmental Justice Network.org. And thank you again, Sabby.
Craig, where can people find you?
At Craig Mokaber on all social media, X and others. I publish pretty regularly on Mondo Weiss, and wherever there's trouble.
And Abdel Halim?
You can follow me on X. It's Abdel A1924. That's my handle, or you can just type in my full name as you see here on the screen. I do also have a YouTube channel and a Substack. That's where I post my podcast, Uncharted Territory. Today, I just released an episode with Drop Site News as Murtaza Hussein, talking about a very similar topic, the second anniversary of October 7th. So if you're watching this podcast, type in my name on YouTube, type in my name on Substack, subscribe, and tap in. And I got some good content coming down the pipe. And of course, thank you very much for having me on, Sabby.
Thank you to all of you so much for making the time to come on, and I wish you all the best. Don't be a stranger. All of you have my email, so feel free to reach out. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Sabby.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, ladies and gents, again, big thank you there to the panel. I really do appreciate that discussion. Guys, please make sure that you follow them if you are not already. Again, we have to make sure that people continue to receive education about this this genocide that's happening. And I think all three of them are great. So we have a lot to get into tonight. We have more. Tonight's theme is what's done in the dark. And I think some of you may be familiar with this. What's done in the dark will come to the light. And there are some things that have come to the light. First and foremost, let's go ahead and give a shout out to Sabby patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. Really do appreciate you, fam, holding the lights down around me. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, we have 5 categories. Ultimate, there's Sabinators, There's a group called Sabsters. They're pretty cool. Let's not forget about those Sabbies. And of course, we also have members. All of their names are listed here, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. That's who those people are. If you're a newbie, that's who they are. And we're going to give a shout out to new Sabby patrons. We call them newbies. Let's give it up for Disenchanted B, Meredith Ramsey, Tillman, Suresh Abro, or Abru. Thank you. Thank you guys. And welcome. Welcome back. Yeah. Oh man. We have a lot to get. I'm telling you guys, this is going to be one heck of a show. We will do call in tonight after the show. So stay tuned for that as well. Let's get to some of these comments here and we'll get into our first news story. Shout out to Maygay62, who's been a member for 9 months, says doobie doobie doo. What's up, Maygay? Thank you, O'Brien. What does Al Abid in Gaza mean? What does Al Abid in Gaza mean? I am not sure, O'Brien. I can look that up, but I don't know. Thank you, Maygay. Rania, truth bombs everywhere. Love to hear it. Free Palestine. Shout out to Piano Man for super sticker. Are you going to sing us a song, Piano Man? Sing us a song. You're the Piano Man. Vera says the Black Panthers knew that no one is free until Palestine is free. Yeah. Yep. Shout out to Marlon, who's been a member for 8 months. Nobody in the Senate or Congress should be allowed to return to office. All funds should be cut off until Israel complies with international law. Thank you, Jay. Charlie wasn't a coward, but his friends sure are. Charlie? Oh, Charlie Kirk. Oh, we'll get to that story. Hold on. One Box. Shout out to One Box for becoming a Sabby member. Let's give One Box a big whoop whoop. And thank you for this One Box. Or apparently there's 2 One Boxes. I don't know what happened here. You became a member again. Who's been a member for 24 months. Sabby, I have discerned Israel hand in America's system for a year or so, but listen to affirmation. Many of undoing of life here point that way. Interesting. And thank you, Marlon. War crimes, government sponsored. Exactly. Let's get the comment on Rockfin and we'll keep it moving. Keep it moving and grooving. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Jamie Dimon recently called New York's likely next mayor Zoran more of a Marxist than a socialist, then got on the phone with him for what turned out to be a surprisingly friendly chat, according to a report. At a meeting with tech investor Charles Phillips organized for Black execs last month, Mondami softened his previous comment that billionaires shouldn't exist and said he doesn't really believe in defunding the police, according to Phillips. Yeah, I remember this. He was responsive and listened. In some areas, he budged a little bit, Phillips said. August 15th, NYPO, in case anyone missed it. That right here should have told everyone which way he'd bend. What he can do to make up for it is use the bully pulpit to pressure Hochul to put the New York Public Bank Act into the next year's budget. In New York, the exec holds power of the purse. Thank you so much for that. All right. And thank you for the Rumble rant. Can't see your name there. Oh, Pamela. As a New Yorker, the election of Mondami is a middle finger to the criminal Zionists imposed on New York City politics and voice to the world for our city. With most Jews outside Israel, we stand with Palestine. Thank you so much, Pamela. All righty. Let's keep this show moving. Again, the theme tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is what's done in the dark will come to light. Will come to light. If you haven't done so, smash that like button. Thank you. And if you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share just like a Care Bear. Let's get into this crazy story about things being done in the dark. Journalist Bari Weiss has now been promoted to become the editor of CBS News. Now, for some, this may not sound like a big deal unless you actually follow Bari Weiss and know what she's really about. She is pro-Israel. She is a Zionist. And all of a sudden, she just gets this big promotion out of nowhere because let's keep it real. Her outlet, the Free Press, wasn't all that. And it wasn't really receiving a lot of traction. I mean, you would think it was huge. Massive for her to get this type of promotion. But there's something here that happened behind the scenes, how all of this was put together. Let's go ahead and get into this story here. It was reported by the New York Times. Paramount buys the Free Press, and they are ushering in a new era at CBS News. Bari Weiss, a founder of the Free Press, will become editor-in-chief of CBS News. This is Bari Weiss here. I'm here to tell you guys, listen, people don't just get promoted like that in the media space out of nowhere when you don't have a popular outlet. There was something mischievous going on here. We're going to get into the backstory as well. The Bari Weiss era at CBS News has begun. In a move that is expected to shake up the broadcast news landscape, CBS owner Paramount said on Monday that it was buying the Free Press, an upstart digital news site founded just 4 years ago. And they appointed Miss Weiss, one of its founders, as the editor-in-chief of CBS News. Appointed. So people who were already working at CBS News, they didn't get that position. She was just appointed. It was just handed to her. There's a reason for that, though. Let's continue on. The purchase price was roughly $150 million in cash and Paramount stock. That is according to two people familiar with the terms. The total amount will be paid over time, and it may fluctuate depending on the price of Paramount stock. Now, when I show you how the Free Press has actually been doing, you'll see it was not worth $150 million. So let me tell you what this is really all about. As the editor of a news outlet, you are the one that decides what is going to be published and what is not going to be published. That's the most easiest way to explain it. For those of you who have worked at newspapers in the past, or let's say you work for New York Times, Washington Post, Torrin Walker, who's been on the show before, at one point he used to work for the Huffington Post. The very first time he came on the show, he said the reason why he left and decided to go independent is because the editors would basically just rummage through his articles, mark it up with so much red ink, and by the time they were done with it, it wasn't even the message that he was trying to get across. That's what editors do. So I want to frame this differently. Instead of saying Bari Weiss is promoted as the editor of CBS News, Bari Weiss is promoted as the head censor chief at CBS News, because that's what editors do. And considering that she is pro-Israel, that she is a Zionist, I think you guys know where this is headed. Now, just earlier the other day, in this letter from the Free Press, this is what Bari Weiss is saying. In her letter today, the CBS News editor-in-chief warns about American loathing far left and its growing influence in politics and media. Now, this isn't just about the left, though, because there's people on the right who are criticizing Israel, but they're trying to frame it this way. They believe that they can get those conservatives back on board. That's what they believe. This is what she wrote. It is also a deeply uncertain one. If the illiberalism of our institutions has been the story of the last decade, we now face a different form of illiberalism emanating from our fringes. There's that word again, fringe. On the other hand, an America loathing far left. On the other, a history erasing far right. These extremes do not represent the majority of the country, but they have increasing power in our politics, our culture, and our media ecosystem. So when it comes to the genocide in Gaza, also when it comes to the US government giving more and more money to Israel, actually, I would say that's not just people on the left who have issue or people on the far right who have issue. This is becoming more increasingly popular. People are tired. And I would argue, as Americans continue to struggle economically, as Americans continue to deal with the rising cost of goods, as Americans continue to get laid off due to AI and other reasons, they're going to question this even more. Why are we sending money to other places instead of helping people right here in this country? A lot of this is going to come down to basic economics, in my opinion. Now, don't get it twisted. You see, at one point, when Bari Weiss was on Joe Rogan's show, this was back in 2020. The tune that she was singing there was a little bit different. And James Lee shared this, and he said people are wondering why Ellison's Paramount is buying the free press for $150 million when experts value it at 75 max. I wouldn't even value it at 75 million. This is what I'm trying to tell you. The answer is simple. The extra 75 million is a loyalty payment to ensure Bari Weiss, who I believe is a genuine person at heart, can never honestly express herself again. So I think that James has been on the show before. I think he's given her a little too much credit. I don't think Bari Weiss is a genuine person. I really don't. I think Bari is very much a part of this establishment system. I think she's willing to throw anybody under the bus. I mean, look at what she said about Professor Rafat Al-Arir. And then the next thing you know, he was dead. So I don't think she's genuine at heart. But James points to something that she said during the Joe Rogan interview in 2020. Listen to this because she sounds very different today.
I don't want the state of Israel and the state of that's supposed to be embodying Jewish ideas to be occupying another people. Like that is a state, like that is horrible. Like I believe that the average Palestinian, I've spent time in the West Bank talking to Palestinians whose lives are immiserated by the Israeli occupation. Like they just want to live a normal life. It's an untenable situation if you want to be a liberal democracy to occupy another people.
I would say this video actually makes her look worse because that's from an interview with Joe Rogan in 2020. And in that interview, she is acknowledging that Israel is occupying the Palestinian people. It's interesting how talking points have changed after October 7th, but she acknowledged that they were occupying the people. But she still agrees with Israel being there and being Israel. You see what I mean? I've seen that full interview with Bari Weiss and Joe Rogan, so I'm very familiar. Never forget, she's the person responsible for this. And this is another one. We cannot forget about this. Professor Rafat. In Gaza, if I get killed by Israeli bombs or my family is harmed, I blame Bari Weiss and her likes. Many maniacal Israeli soldiers already bombing Gaza take these lies and smears seriously and they act upon them. Yeah, so he was getting attacked online because Bari Weiss basically put a call out. I don't know if everybody knew about this, but Bari Weiss basically put a call out on social media to go after Professor Al-Arir. And for whatever reason, corporate media wants you to forget that that's who Bari Weiss is. That's who she was. That's who she still is. But what's really behind all of this? Because this isn't just about Bari Weiss. This is also about the Ellisons. David Ellison, who is the son of Larry Ellison, is very much involved in this. This is what was going on behind the scenes. What do we say? What happens in the dark? What's done in the dark? New CBS owner David Ellison met with top Israeli general in scheme to spy on Americans. This article was dropped October 6th by Wyatt Reed and Max Blumenthal. See, we're going to make the connections. So let's put it all together. Israel's former top general sought donations from David Ellison and his father, Larry, as part of a billionaire coterie to fund digital paramilitaries aimed at sabotaging pro-Palestinian activists. The leaked documents show one planner explaining, in the jungle, we need more guerrillas and less IDF. With Paramount and CBS News now under his control, the younger Ellison has installed self-described Zionist fanatic Bari Weiss as editor-in-chief. And ladies and gentlemen, that's how Bari Weiss got that position. So see, we have to look at the whole story. We have to look at the big picture, right? The new owner of Paramount, David Ellison, again, son of billionaire Larry Ellison, participated in an Israeli government-led plot to surveil and suppress pro-Palestinian activists in the United States. This is according to leaked emails. Originally dubbed 12 Tribes, a reference to the dozen Jewish billionaires solicited to underwrite the operation. The scheme sought out American faces to fund surveillance firms run by Israeli intelligence veterans on behalf of Tel Aviv, as it targeted American citizens participating in the BDS movement. So this goes deeper than people may have realized. So you have the Ellisons here working behind the scenes. Okay, I'm the new owner of CBS. I am going to put another Zionist in charge of the editing. So we manage the censorship complex here in the media, at least in CBS News world. We manage that part. And then also we can use this as a moment to push pro-Israel propaganda. And what's crazy about this is they seem to think the genie is going back in the bottle. The genie is not going back in the bottle. People already saw what they needed to see. But this is what is happening behind the scenes, folks. Oh, and by the way, if Bill Ackman, let's switch things around. Let's pretend Bari Weiss wasn't who she was. Let's pretend it was a Black woman who was handed this position. Bill Ackman will be the first to raise his hand and say, DEI hire. Won't say that about this one, though. I wonder what could be different. If we go on here, let's go down here. A planning spreadsheet names other Zionist billionaires sought for the Israeli effort. They included David's father, Oracle founder and friends of the IDF board member, Larry Ellison. Let's remember, Larry Ellison just bought TikTok. So the Zionists got TikTok. Now the Zionists got CBS News. This wasn't given to Bari Weiss because she's some phenomenal journalist and has done amazing work. It was given to her because she is going to push a certain narrative. Israeli-American billionaire and top Democratic Party sugar daddy Ham Sabin and Google founder Sergey Brin, whose Israel support was still TBD. One of those named, Canadian book chain owner Heather Reisman, had already agreed to donate. The document also listed other hyper-wealthy Zionist activists as potential 12 tribe members, alongside the following descriptions. Eli Broad, 5.7 million, real estate giant. Selmo Nissenbaum, art collector, partner of personnel in Vestimentos. Dorothea Steinbrook, 5.8 billion, the steel industry. The Safra family. Kevin Burmeister, technology innovator, real estate investor. Founding investor of Skype. This is some powerful stuff. I'm telling you guys, but they have you yelling at your neighbor. You see what I mean? They have you pointing fingers at red team, blue team, while this is happening behind closed doors. Frank Lowy, co-founder of the Westfield Group, operator of over 100 shopping centers in Australia. Anthony Pratt, a net worth of about 7.1 billion, packaging industry. Edward Kuckerman, French-Israeli businessman. Rothschild family, banking dynasty. Lord Stanley Fink, net worth 180 million, former hedge fund manager. Sir Ronald Cohen, British businessman and political figure. Lord George Whittenfield, British publisher, philanthropist. Haju Zabludowicz, Finnish-born, London-based business magnate, investor. Does everybody see how this all works? The 12 Tribes Partnership. But they have you mad at your neighbor who's blue or your neighbor who's on the red team when your neighbor doesn't have any power. Hello? Another point here. How was CBS sold? Sherry Redstone, who recently sold Paramount and CBS News to Larry Ellison's son, tells Forbes she feels there's a war coming out against anti-Semitism. Listen to this right at the beginning.
I feel as though we might be in a war fighting hate and anti-Semitism. But when we're doing programming to address these issues, I think we need to use language and create programs that unite people and that aren't so divisive. If we take a step back, I think we all agree that we want a world without hate, that we all see the impact that hate is having on our society and on our lives, and that we want to create a better world for our future generations and for our children and our grandchildren. So to me, using that language is a way that we can come together, we can recognize that we all share these common goals and not think about where our differences are.
This is the woman who sold Paramount and CBS News to David Ellison. So when she's talking about there's this war coming and this attack on anti-Semitism, it's a war that's coming, and she said our future children and grandchildren, she ain't talking about my future children. Who do you think she's talking about? So what people have to understand is Bari Weiss wasn't given this position because she's done an amazing job. Remember what I told you about people giving you that type of money? People don't show up to you and say, I'm going to invest $150 million in your outlet because I think you're great. No, they're going to invest because you're going to do a job. You are assigned to handle something. And Glenn Greenwald points it out so well here. Bari Weiss's big announcement of her move to Paramount and takeover of CBS News, made on the main YouTube channel of Free Press, has a grand total of 16,000 views after 8 hours. The good news is it's their most watched video since she interviewed the Mossad 2 weeks ago. Yeah, she interviewed the Mossad. So Bari Weiss, if you look at her Free Press channel on YouTube, they have over 349,000 subscribers. But this video of hers had over 16,000 views. This is what I was talking about. She was able to grow in that way because of her name, right? So if you're a public figure and you start a YouTube channel, you're going to grow very quickly. But if the work isn't all that, people are less likely to stick around or watch it. So it's not as if this was like some banger show. These are the chess pieces that are moving around us. These are the chess pieces. And I just want everyone to pay attention to what's happening behind the scenes, because again, I've seen too many moments where we're yelling at people that don't have any power. We're pointing our finger and saying, it's you, it's you, it's you. No power. But the people who do have power, the people who are making laws, writing laws, the people who are making decisions that will impact our future, they're getting a pass because they have us focused on other people that are part of the working class. That's how that works. And it's worked so well for quite some time. But I think things may be changing. So this little plan that they put together, which in the dark, all this, the 12 tribes with the Ellisons and everything, this has come to light. thanks to the work of the gray zone. Everybody got to wake up. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gents, and we'll get to the next story. Thank you for the super chat, Nia. This was an excellent panel, Sabby, and Dr. Masri was right. These data center issues are popping up left and right. I hope you got the data center info I sent over. It's all connected. I think so, Nia. I have to go through my emails. I think I saw something come from you. Thank you, Lewis James, for becoming a new member. Give Lewis a big whoop, whoop. And thank you for this one, Lewis, as well. Hey, Sabby, just became a member. Much love. Much love to you, Lucas. I said Lucas. Lewis. Thank you for the super sticker, Zakia. And thank you, Marlon. Free healthcare and education for America first. And thank you for this one, Marlon. Apparently, free healthcare and education is wasted on genocidal maniacs. Ding, ding, ding. Everybody's seeing it now. And thank you, Wasim. Heather Reisman owns Indigo Books in Canada. Please boycott Indigo as they pay Canadians to fight for Israel and fund to build settlements. Won't allow Palestinian point of view in their store. Interesting. So for those of you, that's something I need to look out for. Indigo Books. I don't live in Canada, but they could sell things here as well. Okay. We're doing really great on time. Let's keep moving on to the next story. Folky folks. Okie dokie. What's done in the dark will come to light. Donald Trump has just been blocked by a federal judge who is not allowing the National Guard to come into Portland, Oregon. I'll get into the thick of that and everything that's been happening between Chicago and Portland, Oregon as well. But one thing I want to start off with is this. The force that you see that is being used by ICE, that is being used by the National Guard against working class people. Anybody sit down and stop and think, why isn't that force or any force being used against the friends of Jeffrey Epstein? No? What about the CEOs who are hiring immigrants that are in the country illegally? Anybody ever think about that? Why is that force not being used against the powerful? That's what I want you to think about as we get into this story. Now, something happened in Chicago, and it could have gone even worse. Luckily for that woman, she is still alive, but she got a lawyer. And now we are starting to see that the story that was provided by ICE against that woman is incorrect. There is apparently camera footage that shows what really happened. And her lawyer is exclaiming that she was not the one who initiated this. This is the woman that was shot in Chicago, who also is a U.S. citizen. You see, more is coming out now, folks. More is coming out now. But I can't help but go back and think about what Phil Scott said a couple of days ago when JB and I were talking about what was happening in Chicago on RBN. He gave a warning that it was going to get out of hand. Listen to what Phil Scott said. This was a couple of days ago.
You could only push people so far before people say, okay, all right, but it's going to take the life of somebody being lost. That's usually how it goes. And because they're being way too aggressive. There's no need to be that aggressive. You understand what I'm saying? Now, some people will say, oh, well, see, that's why we were saying to vote for Kamala and this and that and the third. Well, let's call it what it is. The people that's, I think, more affected by all this than us would be the Latino community. And they didn't go vote for Kamala like that. I take a big issue with anyone telling anybody black about it was our responsibility to put her in office. No, it was more the Latino community responsibility to put her in office because they had way more to lose with Trump getting in office, especially when he promised he was going to be doing this mess. And they still went out and voted for him, doing all that dance and talking about I'm going to vote for Donald Trump and all that. You know what I'm saying? All of them should have voted for Kamala Harris. Don't any of you do not let none of these Democrat shields or anybody say, well, you didn't vote for her or you sat it out or you did whatever the case may be. Okay, but black folks that did vote, they voted majority Kamala, whether a black male or black female. But the Latino community, who had a lot riding on that election, is the one that should have voted for her 100%. And if they would have voted for her 100%, she'd be the president right now, and they wouldn't be dealing with some of these issues. Of course, we catch it. Listen, let me tell you another reason why they're being so aggressive. Crime is down nationwide. Even in Chicago, crime is down. And when crime is down, prisons don't get full.
Did everybody hear what he just said? That crime is down nationwide. Crime is down nationwide. Now let's make the connection between crime decreasing and the for-profit prison system.
Prisons is a business, is a $1 billion business in the United States of America. In order for that business to keep running, you got to keep putting people in there. It's not good for business if crime is down. It's not good. Now, these people, and you know what people I'm talking about, are wicked on top of wicked for what they do. They're living up here trying to criminalize people in the mix of this immigration stuff they're doing because they want to funnel more people into prison. But this the thing with that. This particular dispensation of time, a lot of people will get a wake-up call. Even though black people, we're going to deal with issues, but we're going to come out on top in the end. And I guess more so the Latino community than black people, from what I'm seeing, they ready for the midterms, from what I'm hearing. And a lot of them want to go vote against the Republicans, which if I was a Latino, I would. I'm just saying if I was a Latino, I would. Because at least the Democrats, they don't try to get me out like that, right? And that's what Trump is afraid of. Because Trump, don't let the Trump and Republicans fool you. They are very afraid about the midterms. They're very afraid. Why you think he called Texas and say, hey, get me 5 seats? Why you think he did that? He did that because he knows that the Republicans going to get washed in the midterms.
We'll have to wait and see about that wash in the midterms because I don't know, during Biden administration, I remember there was all this talk about there was going to be a red wave during the midterms, and that didn't happen. But to his point, this video was posted a couple of days ago, and he said, because of the way that ICE is being very aggressive, someone is going to get hurt. And he was right. So we fast forward to what just happened in Chicago. Let me share this here. Make this a little bit bigger for the people in the back. Attorney for a woman that was shot by Border Patrol claims agent said, do something, B, before shooting. The body camera video appears to contradict the government's claim that Mary Mar Martinez drove towards officers before one of them opened fire at her Saturday morning in Brighton Park. Now we starting to hear a different part of the story. Now we starting to see, and this is what I was talking about, folks. So let's get into this. Body camera video of Border Patrol agent involved in the shooting of a woman who was allegedly chasing agents in Brighton Park over the weekend shows an officer saying, do something, B, before pulling over and shooting the woman 5 times. The woman's attorney said in federal court on Monday, she has a lawyer, and luckily, this woman is alive. The video appears to contradict the government's allegation that Mary Mar Martinez, 30, drove towards officers before one of them opened fire on her late Saturday morning in Kedzie Avenue near 39th Street. Her attorney, Christopher Parente, said this at a detention hearing at the Dirksen Federal Courthouse. Let me fast forward here. U.S. District Judge Heather McShane denied a request by the federal government to detain Martinez and Anthony Ian Santos Ruz, 21, pending trial. Martinez and Ruz, who wore orange jumpsuits for the detention hearing, were charged Sunday with felony assault of a federal officer. Now, let's fast forward. The judge said, "It is a miracle to me that no one was more seriously injured in this incident in which Martinez and Ruz allegedly followed agents for more than 20 minutes as they drove after conducting an operation in Oak Lawn." But she said the defendant's lack of criminal history and extensive family and community ties compelled her to release them pending trial. Now, according to this is an 8-page criminal complaint. It said that Martinez and Ruz were driving separate vehicles in a convoy that was following agents, disobeying traffic signals, and driving aggressively to chase the federal vehicles. It goes on to say here that U.S. Attorney Sean Hennessy told the judge that Martinez had been following agents for 30 minutes. And Ruz had been following agents for 20 minutes before the shooting. As she drove, Martinez was broadcasting on Facebook Live for more than 2 minutes. Video captures her repeatedly sounding her horn and following the vehicles. In the charges filed Sunday, prosecutors notably did not mention a loaded gun in Martinez's car that was referenced in a previous statement by Homeland Security. But in court on Monday, Hennessy said Martinez had a loaded firearm on the passenger side of her car, but never brandished it. Martinez's attorney, Parente, said she has a valid firearm and concealed to carry license. So she had a gun, but she has a license to carry. Then there's something else. Let's go on a little bit further here. Parente said the video shows an agent turning a federal vehicle into Martinez's vehicle, after which an agent says, "Do something, B." The agent then exits the vehicle and shoots Martinez. Parente said Martinez had 7 holes in her from the shooting, and the agents were in such a hurry to take her into custody at the hospital that they had to return later when Martinez began bleeding from her wounds. This is how crazy it's been out there. Now, here's the part. Martinez is a U.S. citizen. And the narrative that was presented, this is why I keep telling you guys, they are willing to bend and twist the story. They're lying to you. They're bending and twisting events when there's actual video evidence of what happened. This woman was not an illegal immigrant. This woman was a U.S. citizen who had a gun in her car, but she had a concealed to carry weapon. Now she's alive after being shot 7 times. And she got a lawyer, as she should have. But this is just the beginning. This is what I was trying to tell you guys. Because the thing is, that's one incident. Here's another one. The alderman, Jesse, in Chicago. Another one who was arrested. Because like I told you, they going after any and everybody. Listen to this.
Tensions are running high as officials in Chicago and Portland continue to fight back against the Trump administration's militarization of their cities. But despite the administration's claim of just addressing what it describes as war zones, the reality on the ground is that people just want answers. Like Chicago alderperson Jesse Fuentes. Here's what happened when she went to a medical center on Friday after she heard that there were immigration agents there. Take a look.
Do you have a sign?
No, you need to leave before you turn around. Turn around and leave that.
He is under.
I'm going to arrest you. You are going to be placed under arrest.
Do you have a sign? So more for him.
Joining us now is Chicago.
So do you see that? Simply for asking, do you have a warrant? So this is what, and I told people, if you guys like look at the videos that you can see on social media, what is happening in Chicago, what you see happening in Portland, Oregon, yes, they are being very aggressive. To Phil Scott's point, very aggressive. And he warned people days ago, someone's going to end up getting hurt. So listen to what Jesse said here.
Chicago Alderperson Jesse Fuentes, who you just saw in that video, and also with us, Janet Napolitano, former Secretary of Homeland Security during the Obama administration. She's also a professor of public policy at UC Berkeley. Jesse, let's start out with your exchange with ICE. Can you talk us through it? I watched the whole video, and really the entire time you kept your cool. You were just saying, asking if they had a warrant.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. First, I want to talk to you about what we're seeing in Chicago. There are seniors, children being dragged out of their homes in the middle of the night, being zip tied, some people taken out naked, U.S. citizens being detained, heads smashed against walls, people being ran over by vehicles. Yesterday, a woman shot by an ICE agent. I think me walking into a hospital in my ward, seeking to advocate and ask questions on behalf of my constituent is not a crime. Asking for a signed judicial warrant when ICE is present in a hospital in which people in the emergency room and staff in the hospital are fearful because there are agents in the hospital is not a criminal act. And I was met with aggression. I was met with violence. What you don't see in that video is that I'm actually shoved twice and pushed against the wall before being handcuffed for asking that very question.
Just another example. So that's an alderman in Chicago, has a political position, right? So see, this is why I was trying to warn people that the way that Donald Trump has gone about this, there were a lot of deportations under Barack Obama. I've talked about that multiple times on the show. And I do feel like, sometimes a lot of Democrats, they don't really want to go there, but Barack Obama deported a lot of people too. He didn't do it in this manner. Donald Trump's policies, but the way that he is going about business, it even has those who endorsed him and supported him also pushing back. I just showed you guys the discussion from Theo Vaughn, where he didn't like the fact that Homeland Security sat up there and took a video of him. He was making a joke about immigration, and they took that and made it a part of like some ad or something that they were running around. Of course, not asking him for permission or anything. Theo Vaughn is pushing back on these things. Joe Rogan has been pushing back on these. Remember, Theo Vaughn interviewed J.D. Vance. Joe Rogan interviewed Donald Trump prior to the presidential election. They endorsed him. So Donald Trump's actions, the way that he has gone about it with such aggression and such force, it is causing people who actually endorsed him and supported him to push back. Now you have a federal judge who has issued a block against Donald Trump trying to deploy the National Guard troops into Oregon, Portland, Oregon. Check this out.
Overnight in a tense Oregon hearing, a federal judge blocking President Trump's attempt to deploy members of the California National Guard into Portland, saying she was troubled by the Trump administration's attempt to circumvent an order she'd issued just a day earlier. Trump had already tried to send in Oregon National Guard troops to Portland. That was halted on Saturday. The administration then tried on Sunday to send the troops in from California. Then late last night, Judge Karen Immerget, a Trump appointee, issued a new, broader order prohibiting the administration from using federal control to send any state's National Guard into Oregon, and pressing the government's attorney, saying, quote, "You are an officer of the court. Do you believe that this is an appropriate way to deal with my order, or an order that a judge issues that you disagree with, or is that an appropriate mechanism to appeal as you have done?"
Let's pause here for a second. Yes, we know Chicago has a high crime rate. I'm not here to tell you that they don't. I'd be lying if I did. But it has been decreasing, right? But now we go into Portland, Oregon. Portland, Oregon, and I'll show you the chart in just a second. Portland, Oregon is not in the top 10 Portland, Oregon is not one of the more higher crime cities. So this isn't really about, and this is what I've been saying before, this isn't really about, oh, let's go after and get crime. That's not what this is really about. What Donald Trump is doing is he is penalizing the sanctuary cities. That's why he came after like DC, Chicago, Portland, Oregon. That's what he's doing. Don't forget that there were a number of BLM protests in Portland, Oregon, where I saw, they showed on the news, you guys remember, they showed on the news that people were being pulled into white vans. So people have to realize what this is really about. Let's fast forward here a little bit because I can't show the explosion parts there. And what they're doing is they're selling this on violent criminals, right? They said, we're going to take down the violent criminals. Listen to this.
Or property crimes committed and no arrests were made. But the Trump administration insists violent criminals are destroying Portland and troops are necessary to protect federal assets and personnel.
That's the excuse that they're trying to use. So a federal judge came in and he blocked this and said, no, you cannot send the National Guards to Portland, Oregon. Eric, let's go to part 2 here. Let me explain something very, very clearly. First of all, you do not see this type of force being used to go after people who are in positions of power that are, we all know, are criminals. And I want to remind everybody, this is a big distraction. You see, this is Trump trying to play to his base and say, see, guys, I told you I was going to go after those baddies, go after the criminals. I don't see this type of force or pressure being used towards Jeffrey Epstein's buddies. I don't see them sending in the National Guard and all these other people to go take down David Copperfield's ass. Do you see that happening? Do you see them going after all these wealthy people that hung out with Jeffrey Epstein on that island? Do you see them trying to take down Bill Clinton? No, you don't. In reference to immigration, do you see them going after the CEOs who hire people they know are here illegally and pay them under the table? No. This is the point that I'm trying to get across. This is a distraction, and you can see some of the videos here. Here's another one from Portland, Oregon. I just want to show you how crazy this is. You don't see them going after the billionaires like that. Hell, the pastor who was just arrested, who just pled guilty to sexually abusing a minor, the pastor of the Gateway Church in Texas, that guy got 6 months and they didn't go after him like this. But this is how they treat the working class. This is what I was talking about. A lot of tear gas. Let's see if I can go forward a little bit here. Yeah, so this is Portland, Oregon. Portland, Oregon. Land of craft beer and voodoo donuts. Here's another one here.
If you're a true patriot, stand down today. If you're a true patriot, you will stand down today. If you're a true American, stand down today. Fuck you, fascists, go home. You are the only unwanted foreigners here. Oregon does not want you here. As a taxpaying citizen, I want your paychecks. As a taxpaying citizen, I want.
Now, to go on to add to this tax-paying citizen part, yeah, your taxes do go towards local police. And even local police said that ICE came into Portland, Oregon, and Chicago and basically started telling them what to do. So what is happening here? This is what I was saying. They're the distraction. I do not want people to be distracted. So let's look at how bad crime is supposed to be in Portland, Oregon. Now, Portland, Oregon is a city, is an urban area. Yeah, there's going to be more crime there, just like any other urban area. However, when we look at the data, cities with the highest violent crime rates last year, as I told you before, Memphis, Tennessee was number one. I heard he talking about sending them in there too, but just pay attention. Follow me here. Walk with me. Oakland, California, Detroit, Michigan, Little Rock, Arkansas. Not Little Rock. Baltimore, Maryland, Cleveland, Ohio, Kansas City, Missouri, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Pueblo, Colorado. Never even heard of Pueblo, Colorado. St. Louis, Missouri. Those are the top 10. Do you see Portland, Oregon? No. That's how you know what this is really about. Do you see Donald Trump sending the National Guard into Little Rock, Arkansas? If you look at the Portland Police Bureau, it says below is a snapshot of all crimes by month starting with January 2022. The orange line of the first graph represents the average number of crimes for the past 3 years, 5,289. Portland is currently just under that threshold. So this is what I'm saying. And I see a lot of people falling for this, and they're like, yeah, he's going after him. He's going to take him down. Da, 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 da. Let me be very clear about something. The policies that you are seeing implemented by Donald Trump, do not be surprised that if Democrats get in that position in 2028, they take those same policies and use them against the right. Oh. Do people think about that? Do people ever think about that whatever happens in 2028, that he is setting the stage, just like I said when the Biden administration was censoring because of the pandemic, also the Hunter Biden files. Now you get to a Trump administration and they're just using censorship as well, not for those same issues, but for other ones. You don't know what's going to happen come 2028, regardless if it's some people say AOC, some people say Gavin Newsom. What I am saying is the policies that Donald Trump is implementing right now, if Democrats get back into power, they can take those same policies and flip them on the right. And we've seen it happen before. Because see, it's all fun and games when it's happening to the other team and it's not happening to your team, but he's setting the stage. So everybody needs to wake up. They lied to you about what happened to that woman in Chicago. That woman was a U.S. citizen. Her lawyer is speaking out for that. This woman was shot 7 times, and luckily she is still alive. I mean, at that point, you like 50 Cent Tupac status. I don't know. But all of these actions, the way that it is being done, this is going to lead us to a stronger surveillance state. And some people may not see it now, but eventually one day you will. And then you'll realize you have no privacy whatsoever. Everything that's happening with Paramount taking over CBS News and just making Bari Weiss the editor-in-chief out of nowhere, this is all coming down a censorship pipeline, increased surveillance state, and an increased police state. Everyone need to get ready. Everyone need to get ready. But we all got to call it out when we see it. We all have to call this out. So I said what was done in the dark. You see how they tried to lie on that woman, but now the truth has come to light. What else have they lied about? Something to think about. Let's go to some of the comments, ladies and gents, and then we'll keep it moving. Hello. Thank you for the super chat, New York Varsity. When is ICE going to go after actual gangs? Asking for a 3rd generation Latino. All I'm seeing are working people getting jacked. Well, they said that they went after a Venezuelan gang That's what they said. But the people I saw getting beat up were not even gang members. Frank said she giving 50 Cent a run for his money. Damn. Yeah, thank you, Marlon. We could save money on tuition and ammo by arresting war criminals and importing them to prisons. Ooh, Marlon, you come up with a lot of ideas. Thank you, Roger. Didn't see NYC on the top 10 list either. Nope, because crime went down. Thank you, Trash Panda. Every administration takes the worst of their predecessors' policies and doubles down. I'm warning everybody. I'm warning you. Thank you, Cougar. Roland Martin interviewed Chuck Schumer, and it was terrible. Schumer said AIPAC buddies Warnock and Booker are responsible for Black voter outreach and marketing. We are screwed. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Thank you, Harmony. Stay strong, Portland, Oregon. I'm telling you, man. Portland, Oregon has craft beer and voodoo donuts. I heard the donuts are pretty good. Let's get the comments on Rockfin and we'll move on to the next story. Keeping it moving and grooving. Thank you for the tip, Roger. My version of Dems doing the same thing to Republicans is if they went after all the white migrants who are here from Europe and Russia illegally. That would blow my mind, Sabrina. Interesting. All right, guys, if you haven't done so, smash the like. Thank you. Let's keep it moving on. Now for a good news story. We had a heavy start, and now I want to deliver something really positive before we get into the nitty-gritty, right? Okay, I told you guys before about an inventor by the name of Julian Brown. Julian Brown has this process that he didn't invent the actual process. We'll get into that in a second. But he has been transforming plastic into gasoline, and he calls it Plastoline. Now, Julian apparently had a breakthrough this week. I want to show you guys. Julian Brown, humanity, we did it. We ran the world's first muscle car off of Plastoline. That was October 4th. So let's see how that went. Check it out, guys.
Plastoline, 110 octane made from gasoline, 2023 scat pack right here. It's on E. This does not have fuel inside of it. There we go. See the crowd out there. We're making history, and everybody's here to see right here in Atlanta. Yeah. She's gonna try to start the show. We got no fuel in this thing.
Hey, buddy. We got some. Move back. It ain't starting up.
So that's to show you that there's no gas in the car. So they're showing you that first.
It's not starting up.
Get that E. Show that.
Everybody
show
trying
that.
to
It's
gonna
He ain't started.
Hold on, he's trying to get it. Let him get it.
All right. Hold on. You guys saw it. Let me get in. There's no fuel in the car. All right. So now, empty tank, 23 scat, Plastoline, 110 octane made from gasoline, and we're gonna pour it in. You ready, guys?
You ready, Nobby?
Here we go. History in the making, baby.
Plastoline.
All right.
Hello.
It's real now.
Hey.
See that? That's real. It's real. Got
All right.
I think that's it.
All right, we think that's it.
All right.
All right, it's empty.
Yeah. Hey, are you scared?
I am.
No, have some faith. You got
I
it.
got faith.
All right.
I'll start it.
Back up. All right, Bobby. Hit it.
Now let's see if it can actually move. All right. So they have been able to start the car. Let's see if it moves.
Let's get her! Clear the way!
So this is the first time we saw the car actually move. Like we've seen him like practice with this for so long, but this is the first time the car actually moved. We got to go ahead and drop the beat. Woo! Dance with me. Dance with me. Drop the beat in the street. All right. The first time we saw the car actually move.
Everybody back off the car. Back off the car. Hit that. Let's go.
All right, and then there's a lot of
But
shouting.
to actually see an application and do it live in front of hundreds of people, thousands of people, you know, you gotta sometimes have some faith, even beyond what you know and what you think you know. But I'm just so happy that everybody was able to make it out and experience this with me too.
Amen, brother. Yes,
sir. Yes. Yes.
So yeah, there's multiple steps involved in this process, right? Like we've seen, like some of us saw like some of these earlier videos when he was still trying to figure out how to mix the chemicals. Some of us remember when he posted this and when he said that he feared, you know, that they were watching him. Listen to this.
I know that I'm not gonna live long, and that's why I put every day, every hour, every minute into building, into growing. Why am I out here working on this plastic in the fuel reactor I've been working on for 5 years, since I was 17? Why am I out here in 100-degree weather? Why am I out here despite being falsely accused and reported to the EPA and the IRS? Why am I out here despite weird black helicopters that turn off their radar transponder circling me 6 times at night? Why am I out here sleeping in my van, crazy humidity, mosquitoes, gnats flying in, and yet I still do it? Why am I out here despite having to drive 4 hours every time I want to work on this machine? Because when I was doing it in my parents' backyard, I blew myself up and I had to go to the hospital for 2nd-degree burn surgery. I do this because this is my mission that I've assigned myself to. I do this because I do not fear death. I do not fear suffering or uncomfortability. You know what I fear? I fear allowing an idea of something that may not even exist or happen have enough control over your entire life to where you're not even really living your life.
Yeah, so this is when he was warning. Remember, he was warning people that he was being followed or that there was helicopters circling around and stuff like that. And then at one point later on, his mom put out a message where people were worried that he had disappeared. And his mom put out a message, said that he is fine, but he is taking a break from the media, social media, etc. He's also been on local news as well. Because there were these targets towards him. Now I'll say this, I don't know. People ask me like, will this pass emissions? I don't know. I saw a lot of smoke that was coming out of that car. So I don't really know. I'm not an expert in that at all. But I think what we're seeing here is progress, right? Steps along the way, because this is the first time we've seen him like try to make it, and he tried to get this to work before and it didn't. We've seen him, I think one point he tried to put it into a lawnmower, and I think I was able to get that going, but it takes time. And he said it's been 5 years since he's been working on it. So obviously he probably still has much more to do to try to perfect it, because I know some people are like, what's up with all that smoke? So let's just keep it real. But the fact that the car was able to start and move with the gas that was put in it, with the plastoline, I think that says a great deal. I mean, sometimes you just gotta like, and here's the thing. A piano man said, make your own gas. And that's another thing, because we all know like big oil would not like that at all. They would not like that at all. So yeah, there's been a number of times. I know someone in the chat said three fires too. Yeah, I mean, like it's been a progress. But he's been working on this for years. But he was on the local news again recently because they were able to actually get the car doing it. So I think it's good to hear like a feel-good story every now and then as well. And I do just want to mention this. Some people were like, well, someone invented this a long time ago. So let me explain the difference. Grok is actually right about this. You're right. The pyrolysis process for converting plastic to fuel dates back to the 1970s. Julian Brown's plastoline is his specific microwave-based version, which he claims as an invention. Sources like Wikipedia note it's a promotion of existing tech, while others credit him for the reactor design. The demo was the first muscle car on plastoline specifically. So that's important to highlight there as well. So I think the difference with Julian's is that it's the microwave-based version, right? So I think that's important for people to see as well. But still, like, you know, let's give him an applause. Give him a, you know, a good job or something. I feel like that is some good news. He has grown with this. He has gotten further with it than he did before. So he said, humanity, we did it, ran the world's first muscle car off of plastoline. So there we go. Yeah, I think sometimes it's good to have a good story, something that's good news. He's been working on that for years. So what that makes me wonder again is how much more can we do? Just how much further can we go, right? Imagine if people didn't have to pay for gas. Uh-oh. Big oil would like that. They would not like that. All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have 2 announcements, and I'm going to get to the last story, and then we'll do call-in. So let's give shout outs to the super chats. Thank you, Kevin. There's videos of people AOing our worn, torn streets. Hardy har not. I probably didn't say that correctly, but thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Michael. Medicare for all needs to be for American citizens. Skylar says, yes, dude might change the world with plastoline. Sean Cooper says, this is so cool and amazing. Sparky says, President Trump should have hired Ed Wuncler III and Jen Rummy from the Boondocks to replace ICE. They could use the same skills they used when they tried to find the Xbox killer with Huey and Riley. Oh my God, I love the Boondocks. Thank you, Measured Man. Sabby Sabs, did you see his mother and the plea for his life last month because of this? Yes, I remember. Thank you, Blueser. Immensely proud of this brother. And thank you, Marlon. We have plastic islands in the ocean. We need this. And thank you, Geo. Plastoline is so badass. Do we know what kind of plastic he's using? How much energy does I think even go into it? Or if he's open sourcing the process. So he has a YouTube channel. If you follow his YouTube channel, you can see him explain all of this. He can explain this a lot better than I can, just to be honest with you. But yeah, if you follow his YouTube, and then also he's on Twitter as well under Julian Brown. So yeah. All right, ladies and gents, quick announcement. I just want to warn people about something. I've mentioned this before on the show, but it's been a while, so I need to mention this again. There are scammers that are on YouTube, and what they will do is they'll create an account that looks like it's my channel, but it's not. And they will comment, they'll reply to your comment in the comment section of videos, and they'll say, send me a text or whatever. That's not me. So I would never tell you to send me a text. I don't give out my number. But I'm forewarning because it happened to someone again. And so I do not respond to comments on my YouTube videos for this particular reason, because there's so many scammers, right? So here's another one I want to show you. What they'll do is they'll reply to your comment, and then they'll tell you to send them a text. And then once you text them, then apparently they start emailing people and they tell you to invest. Like, does this sound like me? Listen to this. See, this isn't even me. This isn't my email address. Why? In the world of today, we all need to empower ourselves by building different sources of income. And the most viable opportunity currently is investing in smart contract project. Yeah, see, that's not me. I don't do stuff like that. I don't tell people to invest in anything. I'm not into the crypto stuff. That's not me. That's a scammer. And that's also not my email address. So my email address is public, and it's in the description of my videos. So if you receive a reply to your comment, and it says Sabby Sabs, that's not me. Not Sabby. No. So be very careful. I know other YouTubers have ran into this issue as well, where people will make these channels and they'll take my picture from my YouTube account. They'll put my face on it. So you think it's me, but it's not me. And one way that you can always tell is by clicking on that face, like the face, clicking on that account and looking at the channel page. And that's how you know it's not me. So just be very careful, guys. Be very careful. I do not like people getting scammed. I don't like people getting conned out of their money at all. And then one more announcement, and then we'll get to the final video. I do just want to tell all of you, if you did not know, we have reached our goal for my documentary. I'm super excited. We will premiere it on the ground first. There's a special screening for those who are part of the documentary and, friends and family, etc. We're going to premiere it first on the ground in Roxbury. So I'm looking forward to that. And then we will premiere it live here on the show, and we'll do a call-in segment afterward to get your take on it. But thank you guys so much. We did reach that goal. Here's the trailer I'm going to play for you for those who have not seen it, and then we'll get into the final story. Yes, Boston is home to winning sports teams and elite universities. But some might say that there are two Bostons.
If you look at City Hall, no one's talking about that specific racial and historical component that Black people are the ones that are being removed.
There's a huge significant difference in lived experiences, and we know this because of the wealth report. We're at $8.
This whole plan of gentrification isn't a new concept. In every city you go into in the Northeast, they kept moving Black people out of the inner city. So it's a plan. It's been in place for a long time.
While the displacement isn't as bad as 1963, it hasn't gotten much better now.
It's by design that they've created spaces where we are no longer seen anymore. They're wiping us out one community at a time, and they're getting away with it. This is gentrification. Franklin Park has been a place where we have built community, and all these things are at risk.
Why is the mayor willing to throw herself on this sword, do or die, for this project? It's not about soccer. It's about the additional profits that can be made in this entertainment complex. It's a disrespect that you would take public parkland and then give it to a private group to control it. And this project is Emmett Till's mama pulling back a curtain. And if people don't look at what's behind that curtain, it's coming to them.
All right, that is the trailer for the documentary. Yeah, a lot of people think that because, you know, these blue cities, like, people don't realize that regardless of who we've had in particular as mayor, one thing a lot of these cities have in common is that they have found more ways to push Black people out of the cities. And that's been going on for a long time. But with Boston's case, I think in particular, I think is going to surprise some people, because Boston, we tend to have this reputation of being this, you know, academic elite, very progressive, like, you know, city in the US. And nobody's really telling this side of the story. So you're going to hear from the other side of Boston that you don't usually hear about. So I'm excited about it. Great project there. And of course, could not have done it without any of the volunteers that decided to help me with this. Because it's been a lot of work, but it's been worth it. And with that said, we are getting to the final story of the night, and then we'll head into call-in. There's this saying, what's done in the dark will come to light. And apparently that day is today. You see, after the death of Charlie Kirk, it seems as though there was one person in particular who actually wanted to talk about him as their friend. There was one person in particular who wanted to find out and still wants to find out what happened to their friend. And what I found very weird, and I told you guys this before, it's just kind of strange to me that even Erica Kirk doesn't seem to be as invested or involved to find out what the hell happened to her husband. She seemed to have just picked up the mantle, just moved on. Like, whoopity-doo. Very strange. So Candace basically started this own and like investigative series where she's trying to get to the bottom of what really happened, what went on behind the scenes, who's involved. There was a Gray Zone article that dropped that we covered on the show that went into some specifics about the fact that there was something happening behind the scenes in regards to Israel and Charlie Kirk and how he wanted to be able to openly criticize Israel. There was issues with the donors pulling out money, etc. So there were many times where what was in that Gray Zone article and what Candace said on her show, these things aligned so well. But the problem that then came was, of course, some of the pundits at Turning Points USA and others, conservatives that did not want to believe this rhetoric. They pushed back and said that Candace was lying. They said that she's just full of conspiracy. They said that the letter that was released by Benjamin Netanyahu, supposedly by Benjamin Netanyahu, shows that Charlie was definitely pro-Israel and he was not looking to move in a different direction. But now, Candace has dropped some receipts, screenshots of a group chat that apparently she was not a part of because they were talking about her in the group chat, which paint a different story. And actually shows that Candace was telling the truth. And we have confirmation as of today that Andrew Colvett, who was friends with Charlie and also is somehow taking over his show. Anybody talking about that? And a part of Turning Point USA, is now confirming that the group chat that Candace shared is indeed authentic. So for the people who came after Candace and said that she was lying And some of them did it on purpose and they knew that she wasn't. But for those who didn't know, they kind of owe her an apology at this point. But many of them are in on it. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here.
Communications that I had with him. And now I felt like suddenly so many people were racing to establish that his legacy was anything but Catholic, right? Like he was super de-duper Judeo-Christian. And ironically, it was Judeo-Christianity that I was challenging him on personally, like privately. And I was speaking to him about the political pressures of it, the way that I felt because of last year, that it registered to me like more of a cult than a true theology or a religion or a religious aspect rather. And it was back in February of this year when out of nowhere, he's the one that actually messaged me and said, and said Catholicism is sounding better and better in February of 2024. This is kind of when we started having that discussion. We should chat soon. Catholicism is looking better and better. Okay. I then offered back to him a chart just showing how the phrase Judeo-Christianity kind of is really associated with the dawn of the nation of Israel, right?
So even this image, when Candace was talking about this in February, you know, a lot of these people that are part of Turning Point US, they were all saying she was a liar, that this wasn't real. These images were fake. Remember all of this? Okay.
And we did chat about it. We talked about it a lot. And I was thrilled, like I said, and I was being honest that he was attending mass. Okay. But I want to again state that Charlie was not attending Rob McCoy's church. He was attending mass. So it registered to me again as somewhat disingenuous when Pastor Rob McCoy came out and effectively asked me to, stop looking into all of the things that had happened in the lead up to Charlie Kirk's assassination, or at least asking me to pause it rather would be more fair of an interpretation until the memorial, right? I'm going to jog your memory here. Here is what Pastor Rob McCoy wrote on his Instagram after I exposed the now infamous Hamptons meeting, which took place. He wrote this: Charlie Kirk was my friend and I was his pastor. I want to simply say this regarding Candace Owens. Charlie Kirk was a friend to Candace and never publicly spoke poorly of her, although he disagreed with her. He never operated nor entertained gossip or innuendo concerning Candace. My only comment I offer regarding Candace is this: I only wish that at this tragic time of mourning, she would be the friend to Charlie that he was to her. He would never have treated Candace or her family in such a way had, God forbid, this tragedy been hers.
So this is coming from the pastor, Rob McCoy. So this was Charlie Kirk's pastor.
All friend loves at all times. Proverbs. Now, I want to be very clear. If Charlie was a friend of mine, I sure hope if I was assassinated in front of the world that he would raise hell to figure out what actually took place on that day. That's not being a friend. A friend is not someone who stays silent when lies are being told by the federal government. That's not a friend. Again, emotionally manipulative. The family can't have you finding out who actually killed him. The family can't have you looking into those things of who was pressuring him behind the scenes. That's not good for the family. It bothers me. I have to be honest with you. That bothers me. I don't even like that, to the untrained eye, he's kind of representing himself or representing Charlie as like a current congregant of his church. I feel like a lot this year I have been feeling as though these pastors are just not as honest as they should be, right? Is that the vibe? Like a lot of pastors are not really so concerned with the truth, is what I would say. So we should zero in here on Rob and what his motivations might be. Right? Why did he decide to post this after I revealed that Hamptons meeting? Well, you should know, I think most people do, that both his son and his daughter-in-law work for Turning Point USA. So whether you want to represent that or not, they have a financial stake in the future of the company.
How many people knew that? How many people knew that they also, that the rabbi, let's go back a little bit, sorry.
So whether you want to represent that or not, they have a financial stake in the future of the company. He heads up the faith division. So Charlie's faith and what direction it was going into would actually matter, right? It would actually matter if Charlie.
So you have the pastor also who has a stake in Turning Point USA. Look, I don't know what kind of organization this is, but I've said to myself, like, this is a tangled web that Turning Point USA has weaved. Like, I really didn't know that this organization went that deep and that far. I really didn't. I just knew that was something that Charlie Kirk was a part of. At one point, Candace was a part of that as well, too. But all of the webs that they have weaved here, like to the donors that were attached to all this, like billionaire donors, like the investors, like the pastors and everything, Israel. Like, this is just crazy how an organization was just so just intertwined, not just in politics, but also in foreign policy. So it's a lot bigger than I thought it was. I knew it was big, but I mean, it's international. It goes further than that. Let's continue on here.
Early, and I never said he was going to, decided one day to become Catholic. It would have financial implications. I want to be clear, I never had a conversation that Charlie was in the process of converting, okay? But Rob in particular knew for an absolute fact that Charlie was done with Israel bullying him. That's what bothers me so much about this man. Him allowing these headlines, Charlie's pastor speaks out, crushes Candace because of what she said, not whatever. I don't like it. He knew, and others knew, that Charlie was done with Israel bullying him, and I am now going to present you proof of what I am saying. This is an actual group chat, which happened 2 days before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. There were 9 people in total on this chat, including Charlie and Rob McCoy. I'm going to protect the names of the other 7 for now. To be clear, I might actually release a name every day this week, but I want to show you this because suffice it to say, Rob McCoy was on this text thread, and I think it helps contextualize him as a person, in my view, that he would attack me for telling the truth about the pressure that he was facing.
Let me pause here for a second. Some people have pushed back and they said, why not just release all the names now? People were like, she does release some of the names, obviously Rob McCoy, and we'll get into another one here in just a second. Why didn't she just release all of those names? I think it's more strategic not to do it that way, because if you release all of the names at once, then all of these people can kind of collaborate together and try to fight back collectively, one big bang, Also, it keeps people coming back for more. It really does. If you drop all the names now, it's like, oh, okay, I already know all the names. But if you release a different name each week, then it keeps people coming back for more. So we'll put those two things together there. So strategically, I think that actually is the right thing to do, not to drop all the names at once, right? Let's go on.
Take a look. So Charlie writes in this group chat, just lost another huge Jewish donor, $2 million a year because we won't cancel Tucker. I'm thinking of inviting Candace. Somebody writes, ugh. Charlie writes, Jewish donors play into all of the stereotypes. I cannot and will not be bullied like this, leaving me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause.
Okay. So if we all can read this together, this is coming from Charlie Kirk. Just lost another huge Jewish donor, $2 million a year because we won't cancel Tucker. I'm thinking of inviting Candace. And someone responded to him and said, ugh. So what this means is this. When Candace Owens said that Charlie wanted to bring her back, that he wanted her to come back, that was true. And this is the thing that gets me. I think sometimes people can't separate the two. You don't have to like Candace Owens. I disagree with Candace on many things. Most things. I agree with her on Israel. I agree with her with trying to get to the truth and uncovering what the establishment is doing. I agree with her on that. I don't agree with her on anything else politically at all. But this right here, for the people who said that she was lying, who said that it was just a conspiracy, who said, she's making all these things up, where are all these people now? Where is Officer Tatum? Where's Nick Fuentes? Where's all the people? Ben Shapiro? Ben? Where are all the people who said, so that was correct? When she said that he wanted to bring her back, she was telling the truth. Now, some of you may be wondering, well, how do you know that the screenshot is real? We'll get to that in just a second. because someone already confirmed it. Then you get to this part here. Jewish donors play into all the stereotypes. This is, again, coming from Charlie Kirk. I cannot and will not be bullied like this, leaving me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause. Isn't that what Candace Owens said from the get-go? Didn't she say that he wanted to leave? He was moving away from that? And now you have a screenshot that says he wanted to leave the pro-Israel cause. So this is one of those moments where I think some of the podcasters, some people need to learn how to swallow their pride. It's okay to say that you were wrong. But people like Officer Tatum and some of the other ones, they doubled down and they said, Candace doesn't know what she's talking about. She's lying. She's conspiracy and all these types of things. She was actually right. Where is their correction video? Are they going to issue a retraction? Well, no. Officer Tatum had Benjamin Netanyahu on his show where he sat right there and said, I was only spit on once. This is the tangled web, guys. This is what we said. What is done in the dark will come to the light. It goes on to say this.
Then somebody writes, a donor writes, please do not invite Candace. That might feel good short term, but it's not good long term. In my opinion, like all groups, you're going to get a wide variety of opinions. That nasty free will thing that God bestowed on us makes life frustrating at times after the dust settles a bit, maybe. So again, this is 48 hours before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. He was very clear and he was very explicit, and he did not back down, not in that Hamptons meeting, which they're all lying about, nor in this text thread. I'm not going to reveal the names of the other 7. Actually, you know what? I disagree with myself 4 seconds ago. Let's just throw in Josh Hammer for funsies on this chat, okay? So what are we to make of that? Okay, now that I'm showing you this and showing to you that the conversations were real, I want you to reflect, and it took me a lot of patience to allow the lies that were being woven and the misrepresentations of people that were pretending that I was just, high on lying about Charlie and the pressure he was under, the attacks that not just me, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly faced for trying to stand up and tell the truth about what Charlie was actually going through. Why are you hearing it, though, from me and Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly? Isn't that weird? You got people that are hosting a show. Have they, in like one honorable thing, come out and said, like, you know what? F a couple of these donors who made his life a living hell over the last couple of weeks. Why haven't they done that?
So I'm just going to say this. This is very embarrassing for the people, the Josh Hammer, which I'll tell you something else about him in just a second. This is very embarrassing. Josh Hammer was one of the people that said that she was lying, came out and said she was conspiratorial. But according to Candace Owens, he was a part of that group chat. Let me tell you a little something about group chats. Can I? Okay. Group chats, you have to be very careful with. It's one of the reasons why I really do not like these Twitter group DMs. I hate it that I can't prevent someone from adding me to a Twitter DM group. I absolutely despise being added to a Twitter DM group. I have no say so in that. People just do it. And I'm like, how you know we all get along? You know, just stupid stuff. Like, how do you know we want to be in the same group with these people? The reason why is because in the past, there are people who have been known to take screenshots of group chats and either hold on to them until they can use them at their disposal at some point in time. I've seen these things happen in real life, behind the scenes. What these group texts show you is that everything does not happen on camera. In fact, most of the conversations that I have happen off camera. That's how it is for most of us. But the group chats is where they really get you, because you say things in there because you're thinking everybody in that group chat is on all one accord. But at any point in time, there can be a conflict that develops between one or two people that are a part of that group text. And then all of a sudden they may decide, I just want to drop some screenshots, some things you guys said about me. That's why group chats, you got to be careful with those. Don't say anything in a group chat that you don't want other people to know. I don't give a damn who it is. I don't care who you think you're talking to, okay? Just don't do it. But Candace obviously was not a part of that group chat, because if she was, they wouldn't have been speaking badly about her. So that means there's a mole. Oh, there's a mole. We might have to bring in the pressure because there is a mole.
Let's see how you do under pressure. Let's see how you do under pressure. Give them a name to remember. Hey, let's see how you do under pressure. Let's see how you do under pressure. A moment can live on forever.
A moment can live on forever. There's a mole. And that's another thing about group chats.
There's also a rabbi in that chat. Like, why hasn't anybody made that move to at least say, to vindicate what I have been saying about what he was going through? That registers to me as very suspicious. I'm going to frankly say that. It's suspicious to me. It makes me think that in the same way that Charlie was being pressured by money, that you might be now run by that same money, that those same donors might be running you to correct the ship and to focus yourselves on eulogizing Charlie as something and someone that never once flinched, never once for a single second doubted the Israeli cause. Now they want us to suddenly believe the best way to honor Charlie is to shut up. The exact opposite of what he quite literally laid down his life doing. Answering questions.
Don't you guys just think it's strange that like Erica isn't asking these questions? Who else was in that group chat? I think we need to look at that, right? Like apparently she wants to reveal a name as time goes by, but I got something else to show you. The moment this news broke, people were already on social media that said, it's not even real. You don't think that's real, do you? It's fake. All the Zios were like, that's not a real group chat. And then someone confirmed that it was. Someone like Andrew Colvin. Shout out to Village Crazy Lady is on it. Shout out to Mel. Colvin confirms the texts are real. Check this out.
Started this show to address some of the things that have been going around on public, namely about a group text chain that has been made known and released by Candace Owens. And I just want to address it head on because, that was a screen grab that I had shared with people. So it is authentic. And I want to go into it because I actually am really excited that the truth is out there.
So he's like X-Files now. He's excited that the truth is out there. Right. Okay. When this video was released, the same trolls and Zios said that video's not real. It's AI. I kid you not. It's not real. Why is it clipped that way? So for the trolls, that video came from this live stream. Village Lady clipped it to show people that part. In fact, I'll show you myself here where it starts. He starts at the very beginning with that message. Also, is it just me? Does anybody think it's a little bit strange how this guy has just managed to take over a Charlie Kirk show? I mean, it's like people have just moved on like nothing happened. It's just weird to me. It is weird. It's strange. When my friend died, I was sad. I was sad. And I was not ready to go do no show, go speak to nobody, have no group conversations. Definitely didn't want to be in front of a camera. When my friend died, I was sad. All of this is weird to me. So this is where that clip is from, the live stream here.
To address some of the things that have been going around on public, namely about a group text chain that has been made known and released by Candace Owens. And I just want to address it head on because, that was a text grab, a screen grab that I had shared with people. So it is authentic. And I want to go into it because I actually am really excited that the truth is out there. I first want to say the reason I didn't share that screen grab publicly is because it was a private exchange. And
he is glad that the truth is out there, but he didn't share it publicly because it was a private exchange. But that group text confirmed what Candace said. And your Turning Point USA peeps said she was a liar. And you knew she was telling the truth. Stabbed in the front. These are the kind of things I like to point out, okay? Now, he said it was private. He didn't want that out there. Wait till you hear the next part. It gets better.
And I felt like it didn't necessarily comport with things that were already public. I wanted to not betray my friend's trust in that way. But I did share it with some people in government because it happened really quick. It was, it took 33 hours for authorities to get their suspect. And in those first moments, we wanted no stone unturned. We wanted to leave nothing unturned. So I shared it with a few people. Don't know where it went from there, apparently. But here we are. So
this is not looking good for you, Andrew. Andrew, this is not looking good for you, buddy. It was private moment, didn't feel it needed to be out there, but you shared it with some people in government. Who did you share it with in government? Who? And apparently it wasn't safe in the hands of government either, if it also made its way to Candace. Who passed it on? There's a mole. So we got out there anyway. So when he says, I'm glad that's out there for everybody to see. No, he's not. He's not glad it's out there because it shows they were lying. It shows that they were liars. You're not glad it's out there. This guy did an interview recently on another podcast. And what was in that text, he didn't mention on the podcast. He said, well, Charlie wanted to be able to, have criticism, but he was definitely pro-Israel. What did the text say? That he was leaving the pro-Israel movement. Did Andrew Kovitz say that? No. I feel like this is just crazy. Here's the thing. I don't even like Charlie Kirk. I didn't like Charlie Kirk's show. I appreciated the fact that he was willing to have conversations with different people, have debates. I appreciated that. But politically, I had nothing in common with Charlie Kirk. Never met Charlie, never talked to Charlie. Not my person, ever. And as someone on the left, even I can sit back and be like, this is suspicious. And what kills me is you have people who are part of the same political party as Charlie Kirk, and they don't think it's suspicious. And that is just weird to me. That's when I have to ask, what is really going on? So he did confirm that it is authentic. Like I said, some people got to pass some apologies to Candace Owens. I'm not one of them. Because I said, let's wait and see what happens. But more importantly, this is interesting as well. OTC Mom. Andrew Kovitz admitting the texts are real means that he knew Candace and Charlie were still close when Eric Bolling said they weren't. Those texts showed Charlie wasn't cutting ties. He was actually going to double down and invite Candace. Andrew had proof and stayed silent. Yes, he did. Andrew, this is what I'm saying, stabbed in the front. In the front. All of these guys that Candace used to at one point be cool with, whether it was Ben Shapiro, Andrew Kovitz, what's that other guy's name? I can't remember the other guy. Oh, Matt Walsh. Yeah, all of them. All these guys that used to be cool with Candace until she, turned on Israel and called out the genocide and all those types of things. All these guys, and I said it long time ago, that she was being used. And Andrew Colvin, this right here with Andrew Colvin is a perfect example. Andrew knew she was telling the truth, but he wasn't going to tell people she was telling the truth. He knew she was telling the truth, but he didn't want to come to her defense. He sat there and let people lie right in front of him and didn't correct them. They were all in on it. See how people turn? Now, here's another interesting part. Max Blumenthal came in here and said, I reported that a small group of Israel lobbyists, including Josh Hammer, Bill Ackman, and Sean McGuire, and Pasach Walicki were in a chat with Charlie Kirk during his last days. Was Ackman in this explosive chat revealed here by Candace Owens? And if so, why is he covering this up? So this is just a reminder. Josh Hammer. Let's see if Josh Hammer has said anything since recent. This guy. The first thing you see when you look on his Twitter, Israel and civilization. So guys, people are playing roles. People are playing roles and they're getting paid to play a freaking role. This is why it's so important to remain independent for anyone who ever thinks about getting into the space. I'm glad I remain independent. I'm glad I don't have a sponsorship or any of these things. This is what I'm saying. These people are paid to play a role. Let's see if he said, of course, pushing his book. Charlie Kirk's support for Israel, concerns and legacy, retweeting something there. I mean, it's just, yeah, man. This guy, Josh Hammer. What are they all going to say now? I mean, it reminds me, I was listening to this earlier today. There's this country song, the Trouble song. It's an older song. And that's what I thought about earlier today. I said, I smell Trouble. I said, hey, the Trouble song. You ever heard the song? I said, hey. I said, hey. I said, hey. I said, hey. Yeah, that song. I smell Trouble. Something is not right. Something is rotten in the state of Denmark. And I told you guys a while back, this story from day one never made any sense to me. You got people moving things from a crime scene, fingerprints going all over the place, and you don't have to be a detective to know that. I mean, it's just weird. Tyler Robinson, the kid that they arrested, you see him getting off the roof with no gun. And they say he could disassemble it and then put it back together in the woods while he's on the run. Then you find out that type of weapon can't even be disassembled like that. What is going on? Now we see that Candace was correct. We see that group chat there was authentic because Andrew Colvin just confirmed it was real. Now, all these people have egg on their faces. The problem here is I think a lot of us trying to get to what are they trying to cover up, right? I think at our heart of hearts, we kind of know like what this is really about. But the problem here is not being transparent. They have not been transparent with this case since day one. That starts with the FBI. And then Turning Point USA has also not been transparent. So they're pointing fingers at other people, calling them conspiracy or whatever, that type of thing. You cannot blame people for going down different rabbit holes when y'all motherfuckers been lying. And now it's all out in the open. And I'm thinking like it probably didn't even have to be this way. But they came after her and started calling her a liar. So then it's like, okay, I'll drop some receipts. Crazy times, folks. What is done in the dark will come to light. All right, guys, we are going to do call in tonight. Eric is ready. He's primed and prepped and ready. I think we have some super chat. And
yes,
then,
we do. We got some chats to read out, and we'll set up the Zoom hangout and think about our
Cool.
demands. And
yeah, I'll do a quick break, guys, and I'll be right back, and we'll do call in.
all right. Yeah, the theme tonight, what was it? Oh yeah, what's in the dark? It's what it makes me think of is I always want to think about things in terms of demands, and what that leads me to is a good demand is transparency, right? I think basically the more powerful a person is in government, which of course has a lot of power, the more power a person or entity has, the more transparent they should be forced to be. And so, when we're looking at this in terms of demands and those kind of things, that's a good demand, right? The other thing I've been just thinking about it is that, and by the way, Eric T. Red here, I'm jumping in briefly from the background to the foreground. Sabrina has a short break. She's actually setting up the Zoom hangout room that we used to call in. You can call it the Zoom call in or the Zoom hangout, but she's setting that up, and then we'll give you the link. And then anyone who wants to can jump into that. You can listen, you can get in the queue, which you do by hitting the raise hand button, and we can hear what you got to say. We and Sabrina are interested in. So if you got something to say or just want to listen, we'll give you that. Link very shortly. But in terms of the whole thing with Israel and the Zionists, and I think when we connect the dots, right? Why is this stuff happening with Israel and Gaza and whatnot? And it comes down to money and power, right? Is really what it always comes down to. One of the key things in 11 Demands is the acronym MCDS. MCDS stands for Money, Corruption, Demand Solutions. And it's always about, the money. And, what I like to say is that the reason Israel and Zionism is a thing is because you have a set of billionaires who make it their project. It's like their Zio hobby project. And they have a lot of money, and then they use some of that money and funnel it into Congress, and they corrupt the Congress to see in there. So then we get into, we need to respond to that with a demand. And just the other thing I wanted to mention was just that I think it can be a little bit problematic to focus too much on Israel and Zionism as like the one boogeyman, the one thing that's corrupting everything. I think we should think a little wider and think in terms of billionaires in general, in the system in general. And the core problem is that we have people with that much money and that much power, and we, the 99%, are allowing them to corrupt the Congress, and they're making it so the Congress works for them and their interests and not ours. And then the solution, and you can see the stuff at 11demands.org, is about cutting those puppet strings and in fixing the billionaire problem in general. And I would submit that to the extent that we can do that and get together and have movement around that, would also address the particular flavor of billionaires, Zionist billionaires. When you dig down and connect the dots, it's the same mechanisms, the same problems, and the same solutions. All right, let's get to some chats. Roger reminding us he has a chat out on Rockfin. All right, Roger, we'll get to that. Thanks for the super chat, Sparky, who says, there's nothing new about plasticine. The trick is making it cost effective. I'm sure the guy knows this, and that's the aspect he's working on. There's a lot more plastic nowadays. Good luck to him. And I think the other question would be scalability. Can the process be scaled up for it to produce a lot of fuel? It would be another question. And thanks for the super chat, Bill, who says, Sabby, love this gas man. Want to see what'll terrify Big Pharma? Google Global Transformation Project. Thanks for that one. And thanks for this super chat, super sticker, Marie Nadine Pierre. I appreciate that. And thanks for this super chat, Kenman, who says even Ray Charles can see that Israel was involved. They're talking about what happened to Charlie Kirk. And, I would just say, maybe Israel was involved, maybe they weren't. But in terms of our demands and our solutions, I would submit are the same, whether it was an Israel Mossad involved type of project or whether it's just one lone guy who just went out and did it. I think our demands and our tasks are basically the same either way. Thanks for the super chat, Measured Man, who says 6 months. Erica, I'm sorry, talking about Erica Kirk, will have found love, so she is primed to run as VP pick 2028 or even president. I said what I said. Ain't nothing right about this. Thanks for that one. And thanks for this one, Measured Man, who says Felicia, aka Erica, didn't even know there was a private group chat giving honeypot and cover org RICO laundering. Check 7 mountains of wealth. And thanks for this one, Marvin Vargas. Sabby, have you ever tried to have Candace on? Would love to see you talk to her. Yeah, I mean, the reason Candace isn't on this show as a guest isn't because we wouldn't have her on, So if anyone has a connection to Candace, feel free to hook us up. And we'll send her a message. Sure, come on. And next to this one, Measured Man, who says, God forbid anything happens to me. Friends find out why. This is why I need friends like Candace, even though I don't agree with her on some things. And next to this super chat, Marlon Wells. She should not do any speaking out in public places for a while, though. I also think Charlie's wife was in the club before him and knew what was coming. And I mean, if you want to see kind of the history with Charlie Kirk, the Gray Zone has a lot of good articles and documentations on that. And thanks for this one, Courtney Smith, who says, Erica is not asking questions because she's probably scared for her life. And thanks for this super chat, Kufanya. He says, thank you, Sabby, for your truth to power. There you go. And thanks for the super chat from Netanyahu, who's on the Epstein list, who says, "I love you, Sabby, but it's I love you, Sabby, but it's obvious who killed him." So there you go. We got some opinions out there.
Some opinions. Let's hear about those opinions on call-in, ladies.
And we got one on Rockfin from Roger. Do you want to read that one, or should I?
Oh yeah. And then we'll get
it?
to call in. Yeah, I can read it.
Right.
Thank you, Roger.
Yeah.
All right. Sab, although I love that this young man from our community is doing this thing, but I am going to have to rain on his parade. However, I take solace in the fact that someone else from our community not only came up with something better, but has built an entire business around it. Derek Bailey of Derek Automotive, that he founded in July 2018 with Loop Gen Tech, has a self-generator requiring no fuel. Wow. I should reach out to him, see if I can get in touch with them. See if I can get in touch with him in some type of way. But we are going to go ahead and start calling, ladies and gentlemen. If you look at the top of the live chat, I have pinned the link to join the call-in. It's Zoom room. No, you don't have to have your camera on. I don't have mine on. But if you want to speak, at the bottom of the screen, you select raise your hand. I'm going to go ahead and open the room while I'm on the stream just to make sure people can get in that jam. And then just mute when you enter. And everyone mute your mic when you enter. If you want to speak, at the very bottom of the screen, there's an option to raise your hand. So that lets me know to call on you. And then we will go from there. If you come into the show a little bit later, you can also get that at sabbysabs2.com. You can get that link for the stream.
All right. See you in there.
So, Eric, let me make you a co-host. All right. Where did Eric go? Oh, he's over here. Just make Eric a co-host really quick. All right. And then again, if you want to speak, just raise your hand. Let's chat about this. I know people have questions. I know people have things to say, ladies and gents. And that is all for me tonight. I'll be live again Thursday evening. So I'll see you then. And until then, have a good night. Keep up the fight.